China doesn't keep records, and we certainly don't have access to their records of citizenship and who these individuals are. Before they go, they're instructed to dump all those paperwork, destroy it on the Mexican side of the border. So once they get here, who are they? We have no idea. And to tell me that isn't calculated is ridiculous. We know we're seeing them in the grow houses. We also know the fentanyl collusion they've got with the Mexican cartels, meth labs, fentanyl labs, you name it, in addition to, human and child sex trafficking as well.
Is it just people who are setting up shop to manufacture narcotics, or is there an operative component from a terrorism or more nefarious element to that?
That's a fantastic question because
Team Dog, premium meals designed to keep your dog healthy, happy, and strong, to improve digestion, boost energy, and support a shiny coat. Non-GMO ingredients. No fillers, no gluten, no corn, no seed oils, and no soy. Just pure, high-quality ingredients to fuel your dog's best life. It was crafted by experts made for your dog, Navy SEAL K-9 trainer, and nutritionists. Team Dog Food, where no piece goes to waste.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast, or actually back to the podcast. He was on episode 40 all the way back in 2019. We were just talking, it's been 6 years since he's been on here. Quite a bit has taken place for both of us between now and then. But he spent 28 years as a game warden, retired special operations lieutenant in the Department of Fish and Wildlife, co-developer of the tactical unit, the Marijuana Enforcement or MET team, and developed their first sniper unit. He's the author of Hidden War, both first and second edition, War in the Woods and Where There's Smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the stage, John Norris.
Great to be here, Mike. Man, yeah, when you say 6 years, that was a fast 6 years, brother.
I know it. It makes me feel like the next 6 years, if they go that fast, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
For that matter, the last 20 years feels like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, I'm with you. What's
the last full book that you've read?
The last full book, I went and reread Fearless. The Eric Blehm story for Adam Brown.
Yeah.
One of the books I absolutely loved way back when I started working with you guys on the SEAL teams. Post-retirement, pre-retirement, and a good friend of mine, Rick Stewart, who is the producer for American Zealot Productions, did a lot with him in the NRA Life of Duty Patriot Profiles documentary, and he also featured us on the Reclamation and the MET team. And I got to know Eric's story through the documentary and went back and read the book. And that's one of those books that every 5 years or so, I just got to read.
Yeah. Is there a singular takeaway for you from it?
I think that his commitment to faith and how he found his faith and how it saved his life. Personally, I find that very similar to where, I've always had faith. I've always, been under that doctrine of Christianity. But the longer I've lived this life and explored what I've done professionally and personally, I find it just gets more and more critical, and I feel more and more committed to it.
Yeah.
And it saved his life, and in many ways it saved mine. And like the first conversation we had, Mike, on some of the gunfights and all the violence we would see in these cartel grows, there were 20 plus times that, by all stretches of the word, several of us, myself included, should not have made it home. Domestically, doing a crazy game warden, special ops mission. And I do believe I was very blessed, and the man upstairs had other plans. So I don't take it lightly, and truly, Adam didn't either.
Yeah.
Do
you find that, or have you found that your coworkers are all similarly dedicated faith-wise, or is there any kind of disparity there, guy to guy, or are you guys all pretty much that way?
Everybody on the team pretty much is.
Yeah.
And there may be, fluctuations of, denominations, but everybody seems to have a faith-based reality with their families. And one of the things that I find with my old teammates and what made us such a good team is with faith comes humility and selflessness and sacrifice and all those things, all those ethos and buzzwords you guys on the teams need and we need on the domestic LE spec ops side and just LE in general. And to this day, talking to several of the guys on the way down here, hey, I'm going to be with Mike, 6 years later, and man, a lot's changed. And they send a lot of gratitude because you were the first studio appearance podcast I had ever done.
Wow.
And the book was brand new. It was edition 1. We had literally just launched it a couple months before that. And here I am, sitting down with you for a better part of 4 hours and diving in as deep as you could go.
Yeah.
And the guys really appreciated that, not only on the canine front, but just the conservation side of what we're fighting for domestically. And who knew what would have happened to the southern border? And I know I'm not going to jump ahead, but all the train wreck we saw there. But really, that message of getting the message out on a larger scale started with you, man.
Well, that's awesome. It's humbling to say the least. It's still one of my favorite interviews, and it's interesting, even though it's been 6 years. Watching the numbers still go up, and people still commenting or even sending messages in still about that episode. That to me, it I think speaks volumes to how critical and important what you've done and continue to do, as well as just the message in your book. And you've been on so many interviews since then, including Rogan, which is pretty awesome, right? But it's just, I think to me, it's an absolute honor to have been able to sit down with you and do it in the first place. So again, I appreciate both then and now coming. Do you have a favorite quote?
I do, and I have a lot of quotes, and you remember from Hidden War, every chapter starts with a quote, and there's a lot of them, but I've quoted Chief Nancy Foley, who was one of my friends and mentors way back in the day. She ran our covert, undercover, deep cover team, and then she became the first female chief of the agency right before Mike Carrion, on his way out, formed up Met. But obviously Nancy had an uphill battle, right? Being in that demographic and being a chief of a wildlife agency, conservation officers that are very traditionally like military, like firefighters, like law enforcement. You just don't see too many women as chiefs at the time. And I remember she would always tell her cadets, and she would always tell her ambassadors, which I was honored to be one of, with new ideas, outside the box thinking. Once this cartel presence got started on the environmental crime front, a lot of the traditional things just were not going to work. And she always had an ear. But her quote, man, that to this day just resonates the older I get, is change is inevitable, growth is optional. And man, when I think about that of us operationally, I think about what you did professionally and what you do on the military side, on the SEAL team side, but then on outreach, we got to adapt. And man, with what's going on in the country now and what you and I have seen in the last 6 years with a change of administration and COVID lockdowns and pandemics and what the world's just been through, it just applies more now than ever.
Yeah, it's. To me, I think it's such a great quote because it's almost like time passing. You're not gonna stop it. And change is very much that same way. EDC wise, are you rocking anything different, or what are you currently rolling with?
I don't think we had the G48 wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
I know the MOS version of it on the Glock front. I'm kind of a Glock or SIG at the top level guns. Both are going to work just fine. Yeah. As you know, I carried a Glock for almost 30 years, and every 10 years we would get those replaced in agency with the next generation. So I went from a Gen 2 to a Gen 3 to a Gen 4. Then I retired operationally, and then I'm back training with my Met guys, and Shang, call sign in the book, who's a new lieutenant that replaced me, one of my Delta snipers, and a really good buddy. They got the Gen 5s, and they switched to 9mm, back from 40, right, that evolution.
Yeah.
But then they were finding with ballistic testing and everything with bonded 147 grain bullets, they did a great job. And then they made that 48. And it was just like the right size, where it wasn't too subcompact, but it was small enough to carry, satchel carry, hip carry, whatever I'm doing. And now I've just upgraded that to the COA system that they've allied with Aimpoint, and they put that Aimpoint COA on, and we were an Aimpoint agency. Yeah. T1 and H1 microdots on our POF, carbines. Yeah. And that little system is just a great system, and I get some high capacity out of it, and that little gun packs a lot of punch with the 147.
Is that what you carry most of the time?
Most of the time, yeah. I have a bunch of SIGs, I train on a bunch of SIGs, and I still do the occasional class for new shooters, for veteran shooters, for people wanting to get practical defensive pistol tactics down, and they always see what I'm shooting, and they're like, hey, I want to try that Glock. I go, that's great, try it, get the feel, see how that grip is, how your stance is, if it's ergonomic for you, and if not, try this SIG.
Yeah.
And it's like a 50-50 split of what my students are going for. And both guns are great. But being a Glock guy and being an armor and having them all those agencies and doing some commercials for Glock and having corporate help us out, we did several things with, like I said, Rick from American Zealot Productions, just featuring what I was carrying pre-retirement and then post-retirement, and highlighting the 48 platform. And it's been a real good pistol. So
Maybe stay away from the SIG 365, right?
might want to do that for now. Yeah, till they work that all out. I think they have, but yeah.
That shit's crazy, man.
It is, especially from SIG.
Yeah.
You just, hey, machinery, mechanics, human error, but did not see that coming from that powerhouse.
And there's been too many misfires to say that it's fucking human error. I mean, shit, half of them are on video. Whether it's body cams or dash cams or whatever.
Yeah.
If time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
Man, I'd probably go back to the early 80s.
The early 80s?
I would go to, mid 80s. That pivotal time.
Are you rocking a mullet with a Trans Am, or what's going on?
I wasn't rocking a mullet, but I had a really bad bowl cut, man. Hair was way too long. But I just think of all those influential shows and books and the vibe of the 80s, the Reagan era, the Cold War. One of my favorite rock bands, and our rock band covers 2 of their songs now, Rush, were in that Grace Under Pressure area and a lot of Cold War related songs. And I think it was a tumultuous time, but it was a really unified time, I thought. And I mean, I was a teenager and getting ready to go to college and running around in the woods when I wasn't doing all of that. But I don't think I was paying too much attention at the time. And then I look back on it, and Jack Carr and I had this same conversation. It's like, of this age group we're all in, I would go back and savor those moments, a little bit, because they were so pivotal, man. Learning to backpack in the woods for the first time, meeting a game warden, constantly being in awe of what the future held, and not really knowing exactly what was going to happen with this game warden profession, and never having any idea it would lead to this, of what a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about. There was just it was a good time. My mom was still alive. It would be very shortly after the 80s when I'm a cadet in the academy, and I've got the dream job, first to go to college. She's super proud, and then she's diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so fresh out of the academy, she's going through treatment, and I'm starting a career down in Southern California that I've never worked, and still trying to juggle that, because she wasn't only a great mom, she was a great friend. She was one of those that didn't have a lot of opportunity and a lot of resources, and we didn't growing up. All 4 of us were kind of the wolf pack, as Mom called us. I'm the oldest of 4. We're all 1 year apart. Mom and Dad were, Orthodox Catholics and kept it going. So we have this little wolf pack going. But the time with her was precious, and if I could go back in that era and spend more time with her.
Do you mind if I ask what kind of cancer she had?
It was a lung cancer, It was one of the 4. Adenocarcinoma, actually, is what did it. And she had a thyroid cancer thing in her 20s where they had to remove that, and that kind of made her predisposed. But it hit her out of the blue, She was an equestrian rider and a competition trap and skeet shooter with my dad, and always in the outdoors, and it just hit her hard.
Not a smoker, or was she?
She was. But ironically, the doctors say that derivative of cancer wasn't related to it. But how can that be?
It seems,
so I think the writing on the walls were there. So,
if you could get rid of one law that you think is stupid, what would it be?
I think anything to do with overly restrictive gun laws. It doesn't have to be one. Some of the things that are happening in states like California, New York, things like that, especially in the space of the world and the country where we're at, where 911 isn't your answer necessarily, and we got kind of that hit across the bow during COVID, and we had a lot of people come over from the other side to want to have those skill sets, for self-sustainability. And I see that de-arming of society always being one step in the direction that we don't want to go, that this country just affords us those rights and those freedoms, and while we're sitting here.
It's interesting, that sentiment is overwhelmingly common and popular within law enforcement. And I think for a lot of people who are either on the fence, neutral-wise, they haven't shot a lot, or they're kind of, they can see both sides, or they're anti-gun, it seems counterintuitive to them. To somebody who I would say holds that viewpoint, what would you say is kind of, not an explanation, but kind of expounding on why you feel so strongly, having such a unique kind of seeing both sides? Because obviously the more armed a population is legally, the threat potential, and I'll emphasize potential, is more significant for somebody with your background. Can you kind of reconcile that for the listener?
Yeah, for sure. I think it really comes back to self-reliance, being equipped to handle anything on your own, whether you're a 5-foot, 95-pound female, or you're built like us, or you're even bigger than us as operators or anything. And I know that growing up in a quote-unquote gun family and being raised the way I was with mom, with dad, and granddad was a World War II veteran, 20 years in the Navy. So firearms and hunting and conservation were just like a way of life. And I know from the standpoint, and I'm looking at this through a biased lens, of course, because it's not for everybody, and I get that, or maybe they won't see this perception, but I think it was a confidence builder. When you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you're learning gun safety, the ethical use of shooting a single-shot .22, but you're shooting, basically a firearm, I felt that young, like, man, lucky me, I'm just a pup, and dad's trusting me with this. Mom's trusting me with this, so I'm going to take this really seriously. And then when it becomes a tool for you and I, that firearm, just like a carpenter's hammer, you never take that for granted, and you always know that with the right training and the right mindset, a spouse, a child of a certain age with, capabilities, we can handle a threat if evil is knocking at the door and we don't have police officers close. And I think it's just an overwhelming equalizer in a society that is doing that for safety in masses, especially in critical incidents or something like a pandemic or something like a grid being shut down. But I mean, every day, crime going on in the streets of Houston, let's say, or San Francisco when I'm in my old haunt areas of the Silicon Valley. And I compare it to living in Montana now, Northwest, the most remote part of Montana, the least populated part of Montana, in that culture that Granddad brought back. And you just don't have the violence. Everybody is just wired right when they're talking about firearms. You don't have this fanaticism, if you will, for lack of a better word. And I think it gave me a lot of confidence growing up, and it put a lot of responsibility, a lot of maturity early. And I think when we look at firearms ownership and firearms use under that yoke, in addition to the conservation of providing food for the family and being an ethical, humane hunter with a firearm if you're going to hunt that way, I think it just makes good character, And when I think about, we talked, literally we had our conversation, you and I, about 4 or 5 months before the world kind of shut down for a while, especially up in California where I was doing some work before we hightailed it home and got back with the family. And I think about the fear that went on in the country, and my co-host for the Warden's Watch podcast and for the Thin Green Line podcast, that we actually started a second podcast called Thin Green Line, so it doesn't have to just be game wardens like on Warden's Watch. My co-host is retired Lieutenant Wayne Saunders over in New Hampshire. I'm all the way over on the West Coast, so we kind of combined forces, and now we had this time on our hands, and we formed the Thin Green Line podcast, and what we're starting to find now is everybody's got this concern, like, I'm locked down in my town. I'm in a very blue state. I'm really depressed. This is crazy. Suicides, drug addiction, alcoholism, and everybody started going outdoors that typically hadn't really spent a lot of time outdoors from an urban upbringing. They just hadn't had the exposure. Like you and I, we grew up in the woods. I grew up, freezing in sunrise in the Los Banos Refuge, duck hunting with Dad and watching late evening sunsets and heat waves and tick bites and all that stuff. And that's just a great time. But if you've grown up in the city, and I get out of my head and I look at it from someone other's lens, that's an intimidating world out there. But through the pandemics, when people started to get outside that typically hadn't recreated out there, brother, they started to feel alive again, which was great. And then we saw a 30 to 40% increase in nationwide online hunter safety classes being done by anti-gunners from the traditional side of that on the political spectrum. And they're like, wait a minute, I never really wanted to go here, but maybe I'm going to have to sustain myself. I'm going to have to hunt to take care of the family when that supply chain's gone. Or someone's going to raid my house for supplies because it's gotten that bad down on apocalyptic reality, and now I may have to defend my family. So we had a lot of anti-gunners purchasing firearms, calling me or direct messaging me from listening to me on your podcast or whatever, where can I find ammo? How can I get training? I'm in this part of the state or this part of the country. And they don't necessarily share our, political leanings. I'm not even going to say left or right. I'm just going to say our lens, the way we were raised, obviously. But I thought that was really encouraging.
Yeah.
I saw unity in a very divisive time when you started to see the two come together, because now it was about survival. And I think the rational logic of it and the fear put it into the other spectrum of guns are evil, they're here to kill, police officers should have them maybe, citizens shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. And we've seen the stats to back that up. So I think it's a good thing, and I think a lot more people are now too. We've had enough people throughout America, regardless of political, religious affiliation or whatever, go, I want to be a little more prepared, and it just makes for a safer country overall, I think.
Agreed. I guess in that same vein, let's say you wave a magic wand and tomorrow you're in charge. Do you make the decision to, on the one hand, kind of relax some of the standards or laws against certain Second Amendment gun ownership while also increasing certification training
Yes.
standards? Are you a proponent of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. It really is, and I get that a lot. I think laws, background checks where they're needed. Not everybody has a mental capacity or have a background of violence, felons, let's say, violent felons especially. There need to be some, checks and balances in that. But I think when I qualify every year and see my Met guys and I renew my CCW in California, under the nationwide standard going through that, I can carry anywhere pretty much. But I feel that's great for me. But every citizen under reciprocity, I think if they're qualified, should be able to conceal carry if they choose to. And I think that's a great addition to lawful abiding citizens wherever you're at, just like our founding fathers put forth, should have that right. The red flag laws, I don't agree with them as they're written because they generalize. I think if somebody's not adept or in the right mindset or dangerous with a firearm, and there are those individuals, as we both know, we can sort that out with realistic backgrounds, but training and mindset are critical.
Yeah.
And and when I do classes, it's not just how do you shoot well, how do you hold the gun, how do you get over that fear of that first concussion, but it's the mindset if you have to use it. It's a legal liability. How are you storing it at home? What are you saying on the cell phone when you're calling 911 to articulate your defense if, heaven forbid, you have to engage and neutralize somebody trying to take your life or your kids or whoever else? So I think it's just kind of a common sense thing. There's a common sense of safety levels that we all need, but there's also a common sense of give this concealed carry, those that qualify, some reciprocity when they're going in and out of states because we're a traveling society,
Yeah, to me, the concern I have on even the background checks, I agree 1,000% on the red flag law stuff, because to me, if you, or I guess I would say I feel like there's almost already a mechanism in place in that regard, and that to me, if I had a family member that I was so concerned about them possessing a firearm,
Right.
like to me at that point, like I wouldn't want them to be able to rent a fucking vehicle,
Right.
or drink.
Not to mention the gun.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like if you're that worried about somebody's mental state and capacity, then they should probably be fucking institutionalized,
Yeah, that's a
because
good
there's
point.
a million other things that they could use and will use if you try to make that hurdle big enough to possess or acquire a firearm. The second point that I have a ton of concern with, even background checks or certification-based allowances for gun ownership, is who is making those standards.
What's the standard? That's
Well,
a key question.
I mean,
Yeah.
not just what is it, but who decides that?
Yeah.
And I mean, are they voted in? Are they appointed? Who's appointing them? Are they, is it an administration? Is it on a federal level? Is it state by state? Like there are so many, I would say, potentials for abuse and opening the door to these slippery slopes of saying, well, okay, if we as a society agree that our government can determine and decide who can't own a gun based on whatever those things are,
Yeah.
where does that stop? Because as soon as whoever puts that governing body in charge is now in a place of leadership where they can determine who sits on those boards or in those groups and
who pull those rights.
yeah,
Who could pull those
so
rights,
to me,
yeah.
like, because it seems like it's a big debate on the gun ownership side, generally speaking, is, the more left-leaning screams, more intensive background checks.
Right.
But to me, like, if you want to use an analogy to say business, if we collectively vote a statute that says the U.S. government can decide what businesses do at a certain level, past what is being done
Yeah.
now, like there comes a point where it's like toothpaste out of a tube where you're not going to get that back ever. And that's, I think, at least that's my biggest concern, and it seems like anybody else that I've talked to that pretty vehemently opposes anything further than what's already taking place. I mean, I don't even like what's taking place, but kind of in that same realm, I am curious, as somebody who spent decades in law enforcement, is there a line for you in terms of the type of weapons people can own, and if so, where is that? Because the whole weapons of war thing gets brought up a lot. When you're talking about ARs or long gun platforms that are semi-automatic with certain size magazines or whatever. Do you personally, and again, if you're in a position of authority where you can decide, is it RPGs? Are they okay? Are tanks okay? Like where is that line?
Yeah, I mean, I have a reasonable standard on that. I don't see any black guns, quote unquote, or weapons of war as guns we should not have. They have a practical use, not only for defense as an American citizenship, but they're hunting guns too. I know a lot of guys or a lot of people will contest that, but for predator hunting, for hog control, for all these different things where you need multiple shots, even from a sniper aspect, where you might have to utilize that gun to be an entry gun now and have multiple targets where you're not just going to sit on one target or do, an LP Overwatch, let's say, and that's what we chose to go with on the Met team when we formed Delta. But I look at it from a civilian standpoint, and where you might have to fend for yourself, and if it is a foreign adversary, and we don't have enough help from a law enforcement or military standpoint on our own soil, heaven forbid we ever get to that point, those weapons in trained hands are a force multiplier to secure, potentially, not only the safety of our citizenship, all of us included in this room and beyond, but also the sovereignty of the country and the freedoms we have. So no, I'm pretty liberal on that standpoint, that I don't think a 10-round magazine doesn't change anything about the intent of the user or the skill level or whatever we're looking at when we talk about it in that realm. Bigger caliber weapons have their application. I come from a long-range shooting background, not only hunting ethically and looking at the ethics of that, but precision target shooting, extreme long-range shooters that do this on a bolt gun and shoot to previously thought of ridiculous ranges. I think it comes down to the individual user. And if they are a safe gun handler, they are a safe operator, they are an asset to our country, our society, humanity, I don't think those restrictions need to be in place. I think it's a slippery slope, like you said.
Yeah. Well, I think even the air quotes, if they're a safe gun owner, again, my biggest concern is who's deciding that.
Yeah, what makes safe, right?
Yeah. But I guess my biggest question to you is, past, say, rimfire weapons, if you want to put them in that category of basically any type of firearm, do you draw a line with grenades, RPGs, tanks, cannons, shit like that? I mean,
yeah, I've never really addressed it, but I think that's getting a little heavy in general.
To me, it reminds me of the PETA billboard where it's got that whole thing of animals, and it's like, where do you draw the line? And people are like, right here in between horses and cows or whatever. But I mean, so putting you on the spot a little bit, but would you be all right with people buying RPGs if there was a certification process, or let's just say no different than an ATF stamp process for a short barrel or a can or whatever?
Right.
Do you think that should be allowed?
I guess it depends on where they're going to be deployed. Are they going to be trained in desert areas where there's no, blowback or anything like that. I could see where there could be some applications. Where do you sit on that? Do you have any lines just out of
Yeah, I
curiosity?
mean, to me, it's kind of an all or nothing thing for me. I don't
Yeah.
mean to oversimplify it or intentionally not get into the weeds, but like one of the biggest arguments I always hear and agree with the Second Amendment proponents is an anti-tyranny clause or element to it. And to me, because you don't need an AR-15 to go deer hunting or whatever. Like, to me, that's even further a bullshit argument.
Right.
To me, if the Second Amendment clearly states that that the primary purpose for it is to keep our own government in check, let alone foreign governments, to me, then you kind of have to allow that. Because at the end of the day, if we go to war with ourselves, if it ever came to that, where there was a Revolutionary War 2.0, those things are going to be employed one way or another. Whether military magazines and bases are overrun and it's stolen, or whatever. But that's going to be part of it. I mean, you take a look at Iraq and Afghanistan as probably, I would say, the most clear-cut example of that is that even though we had, platforms that are so light years beyond what they possess technologically, they still managed to make IEDs and get a hold of firearms from, China or Russia or Iran or wherever. And that's where they gave us the biggest headache, was in those types of, if you want to call them, intermediate platforms. If you consider small arms and everything below that as kind of low, and aircraft, helicopters, planes, fixed wing, rotary wing, actual offensive assets as kind of the high mark, that middle of the road are grenades, IEDs, mortars, artillery, and RPG type or shoulder fired fill in the blank.
And we saw how effective they were.
I mean, they're
up against some of our
absurdly
biggest stuff.
effective. Against our nation's finest. With ISR platforms and satellites. I mean, you name it, they still gave us a hell of a time. So, to me, like, it may seem or sound ridiculous to a lot of people listening, but I would say I would treat it the same way as a tax stamp for a short barrel or whatever. And even those I tend to not be a huge fan of. I don't get the concealed weapon statutes, especially in some states. But even here in Texas, as an example, I own a number of firearms. If I want to go into a gun store and buy anything, I mean, whether it's a pistol, a long gun, what have you, I still have to fill out the background check thing, get approved for it, whatever. It's like, well, I already own a bunch of firearms, so like, what's the point in that? Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Now,
And why are we adding another step for the
I mean,
short barrel or for a suppressor, which
Right.
have tons of value?
So to me, a short barrel or a suppressor, any of those things, to me, it doesn't make any sense. Now, all right, look, half-ass sleep equals half-ass results. You can train like a beast, eat clean, hit the cold plunge, but if you're overheating in bed, none of it matters. Quality sleep isn't always about how long you sleep, but how well you sleep. And science tells us temperature plays a massive role in that. Quality sleep is a non-negotiable. Recovery doesn't happen in the gym. It happens when you're dead asleep. But if you're tossing, turning, and sweating, you're going to wreck your performance. The chili pad isn't just for professional athletes or special operations. It's for anyone who wants to sleep hard and recover harder. You set your exact sleep temp anywhere from 55 degrees to 115 degrees and let the chili pad do the rest. It's built for performance. You can set it cold as hell at night, and then you can let it gently warm you up in the morning so you wake up ready to go. No alarms, no thermostat fights with your spouse. They sent me one, I tried it, and now it's part of my nightly kit. I'm getting deeper sleep, no night sweats, and I wake up sharp. Visit www.sleep.me/micdrop to get 20% off your chili pad with code MICDROP, all caps, all one word. That's free shipping, free returns, and a 30-night sleep trial to test it for yourself. Again, that's www.sleep.me/micdrop. Sleep cooler, recover faster, perform better. If you're talking about, say, applying for like an ATF high explosive user permit, to me, like that, I think makes sense in that once you kick it up into that notch of high explosives, whether it's grenades or mortars or whatever, is that, to me, that's a more reasonable step in saying, okay, hey, if you want to, purchase and acquire shoulder-fired rockets and mortars and things like that, then that's the process for it. And that's not terribly laborious either. I mean, it's not that difficult to go through that process and be approved. And the checklist is a little more stringent than a background check for, a firearm, but not terribly so. They're taking into account where it's going to be stored, how it's going to be stored. I do think that makes sense. You have to have a certain rated magazine to store high explosives, because those being stolen by some tweaker while you're not at home is a little more, not a little, it's a lot more worrisome than somebody stealing a pistol out of a nightstand, on a home invasion or something. But so to me, that would be the most logical thing. But I guess my overall point is that I think, it's kind of a smoke 'em if you got 'em, like let people buy whatever the fuck they want, and have a pretty streamlined process where, if you check a handful of the right boxes that says, hey, I don't live within certain feet of a school, or the property that I own that they're going to be stored and fired on are in areas that, say, a gun range would have to apply for.
Right, plenty of room.
Yeah,
it
then
works.
I think it makes sense. People may think that that's crazy, but that, again, I don't know how you separate all of those things without just saying, hey, if it's okay, it's all okay. There just needs to be certain processes in place. But I just am so leery and hesitant to give our government any more power than it already has to say
like
you
you
can
said,
or can't do certain things.
Who makes the level of decision for what level we can do? And I think you're reasonable. I'm 100% tracking with you. I think when you get to that point of explosives, you register it, you're in an area, and ultimately at the end of the day, the Second Amendment was put in place for the right reasons by our founding fathers. We're not all radicalized militias. We're here to defend our country and ourselves. If, heaven forbid, the need arises.
Right.
And we've seen in the modern day geopolitical climate, that need could arise. I certainly hope it doesn't, but it could arise. So I do agree with your standard, and I think it's reasonable. And I think anything we do to take the individual citizen and control the type of weapon they can have so much for reasonable weapons, like you said, this black rifle thing that's going on in all the blue states with AR bans and California compliant thumbhole stocks and break the action to fire one round.
No,
all
it's
these,
stupid.
It's just ridiculous.
It's so dumb.
It's crippling our people. But that's a good question, Mike, that no one's brought up before.
Yeah,
so
well, good. Well, now that we got that wrapped up, I think we can close the show. And so I'm curious.
Phase one.
Yeah. Edition 1 versus Edition 2. What did you add or do different, and what have you been up to since then?
Okay, so we're talking Hidden War, and before I even talk about the second edition, I got to give you a major shout out, brother, of gratitude, because you wrote the afterward note for that book. I hit you up when I knew we were going in Edition 2, and of course it was canine heavy, but it was patriotic, it was wildlife heavy, and man, you said a lot.
Oh, I appreciate
and I've had a lot of readers really resonate with that.
Oh, cool.
So I can't thank you enough. And in that same breath, we got to thank our mutual friend Jack Carr. He was in the middle of writing his third or fourth book.
Yeah.
And he emails me one late night and goes, hey man, how many words do you need? And I went, you're like off the grid. I think, what are you, like on a tropical island finishing up, Terminal
Ernest Hemingway's Vacation Home?
What are you
right
doing? And he knocked out a beautiful, he wrote the new foreword, really honored game wardens, which was great. And then Joe Rogan has just really taken to the book and continually mentioning it with multiple guests of the mission of what we're facing through the previous administration to the new administration. And with all of your help, we made that hidden war a little less hidden. Pushing a rifle and going to, battle every day with my guys, I will always miss. But the outreach component of what we're doing with these pins, and podcasts, I was so new to that when you and I first met. And a lot that whole issue has grown. We have more thin green liners running around in positions of influence, like yourself, like Jack, like Joe, like Andy. We have a lot of support, and we have a lot of people coming from not that demographic that are going, oh, whoa, I had a wake up call. I heard this. It made sense to me. And this is absolute bullshit. What the cartels have done to embed here is ridiculous. But basically on Edition 2, I had to rewrite an introduction and update everything. Because, as you know, Hidden War Edition 1, the hardcover, dropped a year before the world would change with lockdowns. It also dropped before that administration would change. And it was a whole different game for the cartel, thriving on chaos. They saw the pandemic as Disneyland with no lines and open only to them. Man, let's ride all day and party all night. We're just going to go tear it up. And they were embedded all over the country. I was getting calls from the new team leader, my lieutenant replacement, and talking to guys on the team. And by this time, I'm at home in Montana, because if this is the end and this pandemic is more than it turned out to be, I'm definitely not going to be handling that in California. I'm going to hold ground up north, true America north, and we're sitting in the great state of Texas, kind of true America south, one of them. So I know where you'd probably want to be too. But be that as it may, we learned that the Sinaloa growers and the other factions of the cartels now knew that we were not doing missions. We didn't know what the exposure to this virus was. We had no idea what coronavirus was all about. So we were all on a hold. My agency was told to stop. The feds were told to stop. So individual med officers throughout the state of California, my brothers, they're allowed to go scout and find stuff, but they can't engage, and they definitely don't have the help of their other officers, because we were kind of staying apart from each other for a good couple of months. And so it was, as it was explained to me by my team leader replacement, he goes, brother, it's like 2013 with the pilot program. It's nonstop. They're out everywhere. And I saw that in Montana, not necessarily with the cartels, but people cutting gates, people poaching animals, calling my fish and game wardens up there, People saw this, people doing things that aren't wired the right way. It's just a freebie. And that was something I had to get in the introduction and talk about the shifts. The Asian organized crime, transnational crime groups, the Chinese specifically, the Mongs from the Midwest, the infiltration we would see on the cannabis front, but now fentanyl, and in not only working, shoulder to shoulder in peace with the Mexican cartels, but actually colluding as partners, was totally new to us. We had not seen that yet. We would see that up in Siskiyou County as a prime example, the last really remote county on the Oregon border in California, which I'll dive into some stories on that here in a minute. So I had to add that and revamp that. And then we added, some language in the appendices of the team being built, some environmental crime stuff related to more polished on the chemicals and the neurotoxins that we were seeing, not only from the Mexican cartels imported illegally to be put on the weed, put in these water sources, but the Chinese and their own chemical compilations that are just as bad or worse, coming in from mainland China. And that was all coming to light after the first edition was written, and especially after the pandemic lockdowns and the reawakening of America, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about our last conversation on here, and as we sit here now, how much has changed. It's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
Most notably, I think the Chinese or Asian influence from, not necessarily detracting, but adding to, there's the obvious cartel component that everybody's familiar with. People have been talking about it for a number of years at this point. What have been kind of the biggest changes that are the most alarming for you from when you wrote the first book, or from the first time we sat down until now? Like, what's the biggest thing on your radar that's different?
Mike, seeing the black market cannabis continuum problem not only stay with the Mexican cartels running most of the black market, but now the Chinese, and not necessarily just in the weed states like California being, epicenter. Seeing it spread out all the way. Maine right now, Chinese organized crime, doing black market grows in the very rural, very mountainous state of Maine, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and just realizing how bad it is when we try to regulate a plant like cannabis and do it so poorly, which, as you and I discussed in the first conversation, how poorly California did it. And that was heartbreaking in a way, because one of my jobs as the team leader of that was the outreach and education component of doing presentations and going to grower meetings and lobbyists and the governor's people and conservation groups, animal rights groups, you name it, and saying, hey guys, we know regulation's coming and it really needs to on some level. We need to break this black market on the environmental crime front. This is stupid to do this for cannabis. But when it comes to trespass grows on public land or private land for that matter, and they're not a regulated grower, don't take the bite out of that crime. Don't go after them any less because we recreationally and medicinally regulated. Because you still have that environmental crime component, you still have a ton, and oh no, that's all gonna go away when we regulate. And, voters bought the Kool-Aid, and when Prop 64 passed, way back in 2016, we started to see the downhill snowball of a train wreck immediately following that. So I retire operationally at the very end of 2018, and I'm back with a young journalist named Jorge Ventura, neat guy. We kind of connected through mutual outreach of this problem. He's with Daily Caller, and he's doing a documentary up in Siskiyou County. And he asked me, can you be interviewed for it, but can you come participate, help produce, let's run around. And so I'm about 3 years out of the operational game, and now we're up in Siskiyou County where Sheriff Jeremiah LaRue, the youngest county sheriff in California, and he's now got the biggest Wild West county that really epitomizes what happens when you have bad regulation and no resources to stop it. You got Mount Shasta, in the background, one of the 7 natural wonders, glacier, pristine water frozen at almost 14,000 feet. And you have a community of people that want to live the ranch, they want to live basically the Wild West lifestyle. Veterans, farmers, livestock, cattlemen, you name it, and just a great community. Bordering Oregon, Norris, Weed, California, all that in there. And now we get this influx under the new law of Hmong and Chinese coming from the Midwest. We later learned mainland China with the deterioration of any border control these last 4 years. We'll get to that in a minute. And all of a sudden, all these private land tracts in rural areas start getting bought up by these entities from other states, the Asian organized crime groups. And they don't have to go way deep in the forest now into the national park or onto some cattle ranch that we would hump in for days to get to. They can hide in plain sight. It's still very rural. They're hitting really pristine creeks. They're into the underground aquifer where they're bringing in their own well drilling trucks and digging illegal wells and getting underground water at massive levels. And now it's a private land thing, 80+%. The public land, I think if you look at it in a really weird way of how much can we hemorrhage here, we got less and less and less since the first book was written on the pristine public land grows pretty much everywhere once you regulate it under a model like California and other states have done, because these guys don't have to hide. It's a misdemeanor violation if you have 6,000 plants or 6 plants unregulated and you're not a regulated registered grower. So they're like, okay, well, if I don't have signs of any felonies in the grow, they're going to rip my plants. They're going to maybe take some of my growers that don't have ID. Maybe we trafficked them in. Maybe they're here and coerced. They're not going to catch a big grow boss. And so Siskiyou County epitomizes to this day right now, and it's a catastrophe level as we sit here. 10,000 plus private land hoop house grow sites, and community members being threatened at their gate with guys with AK-47s and level 4 plate carrier kids saying, hey, your water might disappear, don't make an issue and there won't be any further problems. And that was California's second largest drought in history, and farmers were on water rationing from the governor's office, ranchers, farmers, cattlemen, you name it, and now they can't feed their crops, they can't feed their livestock, and now they're literally in what they feel is a war zone, not safe for their kids to be raised, and they start leaving the state. And all these grower groups come in and start buying up that property. And that's just one example of what was left of a really, really pristine part of California that literally is Narcofornia. And that's why we named the documentary that. And what's crazy, Mike, is I knew it was going on to some extent, right? I hadn't been out of the game that long. And when I'm on it from a documentary, more media side, working with the sheriff again, working with the Siskiyou County Met team from the sheriff's office, and there are a handful of officers, it's real remote. It's 2.5, 3 hours to get anywhere across the county to respond to this stuff. So those people are on their own. And it kind of gets into, gun accessibility and training and preparedness in case they have to take care of problems themselves. And they do up there. Sometimes they have no choice. But when I saw the amount of private land grows just in plain sight, and knowing that these guys are like, okay, the sheriff's office with all the resources and all the agencies helping out, including California Department of Fish and Wildlife's marijuana enforcement team, some of my guys coming up, my old colleagues, they might get 4 or 5 grows 6 maybe on that day with some search warrants. And those guys are like, oh, we lost 1 of 50, 1 of 100. And the underground water to be tapped and poisoned, as well as above ground water with these chemicals downstream and in people's drinking water, mind-blowing. I mean, just horrendous. And then the new chemicals that the Chinese bring in, and a good friend of mine, and some contacts up in DEA sent me the pictures of these Chinese chemicals before they had really been made public, right before my first congressional testimony on Silicon Valley, cartels embedded. It's not just a southern border issue. With that particular hearing, I was asked to testify and present to, and that opened the door. Even our congressional representatives weren't fully aware of the China connection, and that first of 2 hearings that I testified in, I got to air that out and present it and get really good questions on it. But that is what changed. And there have been numerous attempts to lobby the governor to just don't stop regulation, but just change the law so we can go back to the way we could combat these guys with a real bite, and it's never going to happen. So that has been the biggest change, and other states are following suit because they're seeing the money, they're seeing the registration fees, they're seeing the inspection fees, they're seeing the taxation, and they're seeing big dollars for a county or a state coffer, but not really looking at the ramifications for community, for environmental purity, and really just morale within any city in America or any little town, any little rural town. It's pretty disgusting.
With your experience in that, do you have a position on states legalizing versus not legalizing? Like for you, is it more about how it's regulated and that would fix it if it's done right? Or do you tend to lean more on the proponent side of keeping marijuana illegal?
No, I don't think keeping cannabis illegal is ever going to help us. It has no place in environmental purity. I think if you're going to regulate, and I think you and I talked a little bit about this at the end of our first conversation, if we regulated it federally and had a standard like the way we do alcohol and tobacco, are you going to have some black market cannabis? Yeah, you probably are. To the extent you do now, absolutely not. I mean, we're not going to be, spooling up. I don't think you're going to be sending a lot of special operations groups out to combat that problem when you have the fentanyl crisis, when you have super meth, the P2P derivative methamphetamine, when you have human and child sex trafficking. The other thing we didn't really know, or we didn't internalize because I'm kind of in my box of, protecting wildlife, waterways, and wild lands on the thin green line, is that those same growers and those same grow bosses are just part of an organization that have another grow boss that they're working with that's running a fentanyl operation. Or the guys that are doing these grow sites, in the summer months and the harvest months, soon they go to dead winter, now they're cooking 22-pound meth super lab cooks. So they're just one big contracting company that have subs that are doing it all within the organization. So you're combining everything when we attack this. I mean, I'm going after a group on an environmental front that could have trafficked people, could have kids in a sex or labor slavery, and you just don't know. And that's how we have to look at it. And pushing this from day one, when I could finally speak outside of being operationally bound and still an employee of the state of California, this is not a California thing, man. This is a national thing. And now that I've seen it firsthand in our woods and in these rural communities, it could be rural Texas, it could be rural Michigan, man, it could be anywhere. And so I really started to push the thing of, why is this still, with all the attention it's got, you, Jack, Rogan, like we mentioned, the book doing well, documentaries, PSAs, investigative news pieces that I've been doing routinely for the last 6 years since we first met and talked, when is this hidden war going to become a little less hidden, man? And finally, we're starting to see that shift with these cartel groups and certain gangs like MS-13, as one example, being defined and categorized as foreign terrorist organizations and being able to attack that as a domestic, eco-terrorism and public safety war. Yeah. And we've needed it. I know you share that sentiment, but it was very frustrating not to see that happen with all the other stuff that was getting attention. But there's a lot of things with proxy wars and different things that America is just putting their efforts to, and I get it. But at the end of the day, protecting what we have here on the home ground, I don't care where we are with policy, left, right, whether you like the administration or don't, until we have secure borders and we're safe in our own country and our kids aren't being poisoned by bad weed and wildlife and these chemicals and these multi-billion-dollar profiteers, these transnational criminal groups, China and Mexican cartels at the top of that list, I don't think we're making a dent until we get that handled first.
You've mentioned kind of the Asian connection, and this has been a bit of a, I don't want to say resurgence, but it's come up in the last few years considerably since the last time we talked. Could you put a percentage on traditional South American or Mexico and South American cartel illegal grow sites in the United States, and now the Asian component, like what the breakdown is between Asian and
versus the traditional Mexican cartels? It has shifted considerably. And I'll use Northern California as an example. Siskiyou County right now, very, very small, if any. Sinaloa, Jalisco New Generation, any of those cartels involved in the weed trade. But Chinese, 90+%.
Really?
Yeah. But you go to Shasta County, just south of there, and where Rumble, our great dog handler, Phoebe's dog handler, is based, and some med guys, and we're doing a lot of work with their sheriff's team and the Department of Cannabis Control. It's a kind of a task force approach now in California because everybody's getting a piece of the financial pie, based on regulated dispensary fees that everybody pays. A legitimate grow site outdoor has so many environmental loopholes to go through, appropriately so, and they do a good job. But there's a lot of money that goes into that funds the effort to combat it. It's kind of a back and forth. And in Shasta County right now, for example, more and more of the Chinese element, the Asian element are coming in, but Sinaloa still a big presence. As of talking to guys up there just last week. But the other states, you look at Maine, almost exclusively Chinese growers from organized crime groups. Oklahoma is doing the same thing. And something we haven't had a chance to talk about, even just messaging back and forth over the years and running into each other periodically, is when I got wind of the Chinese and the Sinaloa cartel especially, and now the other Mexican cartels working with the Chinese, that it wasn't just, hey, we want to work in America on that black market and make a lot of money and use that as our stomping ground between our two nations. We're actually going to partner. And I was blown away by this. And I got this data before first congressional testimony and got to put that into the presentation. And, bipartisan committee in the House of Representatives in Congress, the eyes were, whoa, what? It's an actual domestic partnership. And I said, yeah, it is. And this is how it was explained to me by DEA analysts and different people that have reached out at the highest level, so China, why would China be in the weed trade in America? I mean, we just ask ourselves that as a question. What is in it? It's a cash business only. You can't really do anything electronically with the money. It's not insured, so what are they doing? And the way it's explained to me is China just wants to amass as much black market cash that they can launder just to have a bunch of capital to eventually change the dollar standard to the Chinese by 2035. That was the FAR philosophy. That was kind of the financial model that analysts at the federal level conveyed to me. But the way they were doing that is they were talking to Sinaloa as one example, and Sinaloa and the Chinese are going, well, China, you need your money laundered, or Sinaloa, you need your money laundered, because approximately 6% of every black market dollar that the cartels make, regardless of what side of the fence they're on, Chinese or Mexican, 6% of everything they're going to make, they have to spend to launder their money, to clean it. And that was kind of new to me about just a couple of years ago. And so the Chinese said, well, what we're going to, the Sinaloa said, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and partner up. We're in the fentanyl trade now, because fentanyl is the big money thing, as we know. And China, you supply the precursor chemicals. We're going to let you have a lot of the weed trade, because you want those black market dollars. And then basically what we're going to do now is Sinaloa, we're going to launder your money in embedded businesses that we, the Chinese, have all over America. And instead of 6%, let's try this at 5%. And the relationship just got better and better. Now we're charging you 4%, guys, and we're going to provide these precursor chemicals. You guys are going to stay in fentanyl. We'll do a little in fentanyl, but we really need this weed, dollar, untrackable money. We need this currency. And right now, they are literally paying zero fees to have their money laundered. It is a very, very positive relationship for these two entities, and they're doing it in every state in America. And when I got wind of that, man, I'm like, okay, well, we already know where China sits on the geopolitical grid right now and where they sit with us as, a sovereign nation in the U.S. And now we got our southern border, Mexico, doing what they're doing, killing 100,000 or so Americans a year on the fentanyl deaths, especially at those critical ages of kids from all over, middle age, young age. Pretty eye-opening.
Yeah. Do you understand, or can you help me understand the kind of chain of custody from a money laundering standpoint? If they're laundering money in Chinese and Latino-owned businesses in the United States, and that's the need for the laundering, because obviously if it's going back to Mexico or China,
Right.
there's no need to launder it. Do you understand how they would have an ability to replace the U.S. dollar as kind of the global international gold standard currency-wise with Chinese by doing that? If you're training without a plan, you're just sweating in circles. Whether you're plateauing, bored, or just getting started, having a tailored program makes all the difference. FitBod reached out and gave me a look at their app for my honest take. For folks looking to build real structure around their workouts, it's solid. The app customizes your training plan based on your goals, gear, and schedule. No guesswork, no fluff. It adjusts as you progress, tracks muscle recovery, and even helps you avoid burnout by rotating your focus. It's like having a certified personal trainer on your phone without shelling out hundreds a month. The FitBod app comes with over 1,000 demo videos, so you're never lost on form. You can set goals from strength to muscle tone, and the algorithm evolves as you get stronger. This is smart training for people who want to push further and get results that actually last. Get in shape this summer with FitBod. Join FitBod today to get your personalized workout plan. You can get 25% off your subscription or try the app for free for 7 days at fitbod.me/micdrop. Restrictions apply. That's fitbod.me/micdrop.
I don't understand the minutia of the accounting of it, but the way it was explained to me, like I said, by friends at the upper levels in DEA, it's just if they amass enough of this, and they take further power in the U.S., depending on whatever they're going to do with soft or hard power, that they can make that switch. And it was very generalized. I haven't, broken it down, but from reputable folks that are very, very concerned about it, and there was only one, I think, news piece on this. It might have been NBC. Lester Holt interviewed Bill Bodner, a good friend of mine, now retired SAC of DEA out of Los Angeles, and we were communicating on all this before I went to Congress as he explained it. And he broke it down in that article, and there have been a couple of print articles, but where else have we seen it?
Nowhere.
Nobody knows about it, man. It's like the whole hidden war thing, and I went, why is that? I mean, we know the global power and influence China has right now. We know what they have made overtly clear of what they want to do in America. They're not hiding it. They're preparing for it on every level. The Mexican cartels are helping them, poisoning us from within with soft power and soft hits. We're not even having to fire a shot right now. So why this wasn't getting more attention when it dropped 2 years ago blew my mind. Hence the discussion with the congressional committees. And right away, they did a bipartisan, I believe they brought in the Senate as well, to say, we need to subpoena Biden's DOJ and find out how many of these marijuana cannabis cases are Chinese run. And that was hard information to get, apparently, but they started to really look at the states reporting it, and the numbers were pretty mind-blowing of what dominant percentage, like I just said in that 80-90 percentile, came across.
Do you know what it is nationally?
About the same from what I'm hearing from all the other states.
So at this point, across the country, 80 to 90% of the illegal grow sites in the United States are Chinese-owned? No shit.
Yep, that's what we're hearing.
Wow.
That's what the other states are reporting too. The only place the cartels are staying involved from Mexico, like in the states where they've just regulated and they don't have a lot of resources, and they're kind of experiencing what we started to experience 15, 20 years ago with these outdoor public land grow sites. That's happening in a percentage in other states. It's not just a private land thing. And Sinaloa is still involved, and some other Mexican cartels are as well. But they're just finding they're getting out of that to maybe it's a 10, 15%. And again, approximations. We don't know the exact numbers, but all these other states popping up dominate with the Asian organized crime groups.
Yeah. Is the assumption that I would make correct in that that change or that allowance of enabling or allowing China to come in and basically take over the majority of their territory is because it's easier for them to grow in their home territory and just smuggle it across the border with the borders being so open the last 4 years? Is
that was one of them? Yeah.
Because they don't seem like the type of organization that would be too keen on letting anybody else come in and kind of piss on their fire hydrant, so to speak. It seems odd that they didn't put up more of a fight, but I guess, that would be my logical thought process is that, one of the big reasons why they were doing it, at least from my understanding, was that back then the border was a lot tighter, and so it made sense then. But now if the border's wide open, it's like, well, shit, we'll just grow it in our backyard and smuggle it across because we have less chance of being busted. Is that the primary reason? Or?
It was, and you're 100% on that, brother. The thing that we saw, though, and I'll use, we talk about COVID, we talk about that administration change, we talk about the border going to, anybody can come across, we're gonna make it happen. Here's where you really saw the shift of how cannabis from the Mexican cartel side wasn't so much of a thing for them anymore. Because the panga boats that we might have talked a little bit about the pangas that I highlight in both books, but those one-way boats that are built gunmetal gray, big hulls to carry up to maybe say 4, 5, 6,000 pounds of marijuana, or they're gonna bring fentanyl, they're gonna bring meth, or they're gonna bring people, What do we see during that shift? When the border's wide open, we still see panga boats dropping all over the Pacific Ocean side, all the way from like San Diego County to Northern California and beyond. And what do they have in them? If they're not interdicted, they have PFDs for people left in the boats of 16 to 20 people. They're not even bringing contraband. They're bringing operatives. That obviously, we know it's not that hard to get across that border during that last 4-year window. You put up $4,000 to $6,000 with one particular faction of Sinaloa or Jalisco New Generation especially, and they're gonna get you across. And then you're gonna go through all the, amnesty process or not. You know exactly where to go, where you're gonna get integrated back in here. So why the heck were they running panga boats? And why are they bringing people all the way around to put that effort, those resources, because that's a pretty expensive endeavor and a pretty risky one in those boats. But to the second part of that point is they weren't bringing marijuana in. And they just are pulling further and further away from it because in the grander scheme of things, it's not that big of a moneymaker for them anymore because of fentanyl trade. What they can make on, 4 million fentanyl pills in a small space, and what they can get for them in, say, Dallas, San Jose, California, or Chicago at $5 to $6 a pill. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Native American influence, tribal nations being impacted, which also started relatively recently. It's been going on for a while, but it all came to light in my new home state of Montana, in one of the most rural areas, and at $100 a pill in these tribal nations to a disenfranchised, addicted community that's struggling with addiction in other areas, decimating communities and making a ton of money in the fentanyl trade. And the human trafficking, once the border opened, Mike, the human trafficking and the money they can make, whether it's children or labor workers or whatever, and continue to make money on that same commodity every day, every hour, however it may be, versus what they were getting, say, of a pound of Sinaloa tainted weed with nerve agents on it. That seemed to be the shift.
Right.
And that's why they're saying, hey man, we don't want to be totally out of it, but we're okay letting the Chinese and the Asian groups take most of it over, but they're going to give us a lot back in spades. The money laundering, the fentanyl precursors, and sending their own people, here's how you're going to make fentanyl, here's how you're going to make really potent fentanyl, and colluding that way. And to me, that's just the softest power internal attack on our nation when those two groups get together, man. And that was not a big part of what I was seeing right before I retired operationally. Right. But everyone see it now at home.
You mentioned operatives. Is it just people who are setting up shop to manufacture narcotics, or is there an operative component from a terrorism or even more nefarious element to that? Because I remember seeing a huge shift. Early on in the Biden administration, it was primarily Mexican and South American nationalists coming across the border. And then you started seeing like alarmingly high numbers of specifically Chinese, but people from all over the world, but a ton of Chinese nationalists. And these were guys that, were fighting age males in decent shape, clean cut, they just looked different. I mean, they sure as fuck didn't look like refugees.
Right.
What have you seen as far as that impact? Are those guys, in your opinion, fueling and starting up these grow sites, or is there more to it than that?
No, they're without a doubt. And you brought up a good point that's in my little notes to talk about is, and again, looking what Jorge was doing at Daily Caller and News Nation and spending so much time in that border and locking into specifically the Chinese process of getting across the border. Military-age males with clean passports, not looking all wrung down and ragged like your Mexican citizen. Just got off the plane. Just trying to go. Not your traditional border crosser refugee, if you will. And the fact that they've already got embedded transport, and they're going to pay Jalisco, let's say, or Sinaloa $30,000 or $35,000 to get a Chinese operative across versus the 4 to 5 that your native, your Mexican citizen is going to have to pay. Well, someone's investing in something big there, and then to have really good transportation as soon as they get across the border. The thing I found fascinating is because China doesn't keep records, and we certainly don't have access to their records of citizenship and who these individuals are. Any of their paperwork, whether it's for an amnesty or however they're getting, and it's down in South America before they go, they're instructed to dump all those paperwork, destroy it on the Mexican side of the border. So once they get here, who are they? We have no idea. And to tell me that isn't calculated is ridiculous. We know we're seeing them in the grow houses. We also know the fentanyl collusion they've got with the Mexican cartels. We also know they're trafficking their own people, Mexicans, and the two groups working together are trafficking their own people in these grow houses, meth labs, fentanyl labs, you name it, in addition to, human and child sex trafficking as well.
Do you know if there is another component specifically to like a higher level terrorism type of threat? Have you seen any evidence of that with whether it's Asian nationals or Middle Eastern or whatever, of people who have come across the border that there's been either intent or some sort of evidence that would portray that that's why they're here and kind of that's what the goal is?
I haven't seen it specifically on the Asian, say Chinese side. Could it be? Highly likely, I think, with what we're seeing. But what was the last figure? And correct me, you're probably familiar with this, but it was 200 plus known jihadists, terrorists on the national watch list that made it across right before things tightened up. At least that many, and they're here. They obviously had to work somehow with the Mexican cartels to get here, to get set up and not be interdicted on any level, even by happenstance. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
They're here. Are they working with the Chinese? I'd say most likely. Do I know for sure? No. But it would make perfect sense given what both of those nations, the Mexican cartel world and the Chinese organized crime transnational criminal organizations, are doing, and just where we sit under China's lens right now of what may happen in conflict or what might not, it lends itself to being the case.
Yeah. So with that, I guess as it relates to the people that you work with now and your former line of work, how big of an understanding is relayed from your guys to whether it's Border Patrol or the federal government at any level that's kind of liaisoning and being that alarm, if you will, of highlighting that this is taking place, saying, where it's happening, at what level, like how much of that is being actually communicated at a federal level or a Border Patrol level to people that can actually do something about that? And has there been any response?
That's a great question, and it's a positive answer because the communication has opened up considerably, especially under the new administration. I mean, Trump made it a point, I'm going after these cartels, and right now, when I think of my old teammates, I think of the Border Patrol agents I have running all over Lincoln County, Montana. I'm 25 miles from the Alberta border. We tightened up this border so tight, we hit it like light speed down here, not far from where we're sitting here in the great state of Texas. It definitely had a blowback to the northern border. I mean, that's a wide open 5,000 plus miles. It's mostly wooded timber. It's not open visibility like some of our desert areas. So of course, what are these guys going to do? What are these organizations going to do? They're going to shift tactics. They're going to fill and flow, like we used to say, and in the Met team, fill and flow and find another way in. So the northern border right now is where we're really being, violated, and it's vulnerable. My Border Patrol buddies up there that I communicate with make that clear. The sheriffs are aware. The game wardens are fully aware. I talk with the game wardens right in the home state of Montana. Everyone's starting to work together on that because especially guys that are wired to be in interesting terrain, right? Work really well in the woods, work really well in inclement weather or whatever. It's kind of a perfect storm up there to get fentanyl across, to traffic people for whatever, potentially a terrorism hit. It's a lot easier to sneak one in now, right? Up in that northern unprotected border. And it's protected, just not to the flooded level because we just don't have enough resources, but they're trying. On the southern border down here, Texas game wardens doing a great job with the Rangers, with Department of Public Safety Texas, with Border Patrol, with ICE, all of it, and Homeland Security. That all really changed, started to change for the better 2016, 2017, 2018, with the change of administration. Things got kind of ghosty and really quiet, during the COVID years, during that administration. And now I'm just glad to see that our current president has made this a priority and he's willing to put the resources toward it to really make a difference. And not just from a law enforcement, even bringing National Guard and military assets in it. I mean, we got to combat it for sure. But community education, awareness with children, what do we do about this fentanyl crisis of someone getting a bad pill? Andy Stump and I, mutual friend of both of ours, on doing a couple of change agents and cleared hot with him. We're 90 minutes apart. And we talked about this. Well, what are we going to do about this fentanyl thing with our kids? I mean, he's like, do I need to get a test kit for my teenagers if they're thinking about taking a pain pill? Yeah. I mean, it's just, what's this come to? Because it's not like a joint that's going to give you a really weird high, maybe a bad headache because it's bad weed. And I'm talking, pre-neurotoxins added to the weed, cartel style. It's one and done with this, So there has been, long-windedly, to your question, a lot more focus, and morale is high right now. It really is, especially with the federal agents, man. The Border Patrol going from, I feel like a glorified human trafficker. I want to quit my job, like depression.
Right.
Like maybe borderline, I don't want to be here anymore. And that just broke my heart, because I've worked with those men and women, not only down here after retirement, getting to know them, but also on the northern border where home is now. So there is a positive upswing in that. I can say one thing, where it kind of started is I was invited to a private function at SHOT Show, 2016. And I was still operational. Met team had been going for about 2 years, and I was down there doing what we all do as team leaders, whether we're domestic or law enforcement, military, whatever, looking at vendors, doing the rounds, educating, learning from guys like yourself, team guys.
Not going to strip clubs.
No, not going to strip clubs, just, 8 to 5, just doing it up.
No drinking.
No drinking involved.
Yeah.
Who's what? Anyway, and about 60 of us from the outdoor industry, tactical, whether military, law enforcement, whatever, were invited. The Trumps were at an event just before Don Sr. was kicking out on the campaign trail. And Don Jr. is an avid hunter and is also very close with now deceased Jason Hairston, who's the founder of Kuyu Ultralight Hunting. And Kuyu was really big for us. When I discovered that line of gear for a mountain goat hunt that I was very fortunate, a bucket list hunt, to do in 2014, I realized that was a wired right company. And not only did we start using their gear operationally for hunting and conservation work, but working to develop a tactical line with them. And they had a connection to that company, the Trumps did. So that night at SHOT Show, I got a face-to-face with now current second-term president, Don Jr. as well, met him for the first time. And the reason I was invited to that by Jason, by the founder of Kuyu, was he was so moved by the first book, War in the Woods. He didn't know anything about these cartels embedded. He didn't know California game wardens were fighting them, even before, with the tactical unit. He didn't know about the poisons, yet he's a California guy like I was originally, and he's in all those woods doing this. And so he said, "This is crazy, man. We need to do something with this. I want to help you guys out with gear, whatever I can do. But more importantly, we got to get this to some levels so we can try to change it around." And that night, I dumped books on everybody in the Trump family. And I mean, this is how old it was. We had DVDs from Patriot Profiles and the stuff Rick had done, Rick Stewart really well, that visually told our story. And I remember Don Jr. looking right at me after the introduction and looking over at Jason, the founder of Kuyu, and introduced me. He goes, "John's a game warden in California in the Silicon Valley? And they're fighting cartels and getting in gunfights? And there's nerve agents on this weed and poisoning the water?" And he's just like, "How the F do I not know about this, and how does my dad not know?" And Jason goes, "That's exactly why John's here tonight." And I was with some SEAL Team 1 guys I work with, and they were all fired up about the deal. And sure enough, right when he got elected and made it, to everybody's surprise, we're on sanctuary state lockdowns now. We can't even talk to ICE under our laws from our leadership if we run into a cartel, undocumented, deportable felon. But now all of a sudden, the U.S. Forest Service are funded through Operation Forest Watch, $20 million, I believe it was. And AG Sessions, the first AG under Trump's first term, he said, "These marijuana cases, they go far beyond just a marijuana problem. Don't minimize them. Don't go for the white dope stuff necessarily. Do that other stuff. But I want you to go after this on the environmental front and track down some bigger players." So now we're helping the feds actually do the priority that we're seeing now, but it was short-lived because of the change of administration later, and then what happened with COVID. But now, to have that priority going and these foreign terrorist organization definitions, we're starting to make some headway, I think.
Do you remember what year Newsom became governor?
Oh, gosh.
Is that like saying Voldemort, saying his name?
Yeah, that was... So second, he's about to be done in California.
Almost 8 years ago.
8 years ago,
So
give or take.
he was the governor when you were still in and doing,
Yeah.
kind of really at the height of what you were doing, right?
It was the transition. Jerry Brown was just leaving as we started Met. Newsom came in, and because we worked for the governor's office in California, we're under the Resources Agency, our director made it a point to make sure we weren't doing this. We weren't doing outreach anymore. Like I said, 30% of my job, we were doing documentaries with vetted producers like Rick Stewart from American Zealot Productions. We had everybody from Dan Rather and his correspondent, CNN to Fox, ABC, NBC. We had every side of the political spectrum of news agencies that wanted to come in once we cleared a site, made it safe, and see this site, see the patron saint, see the cartel mindset, see the poison, see the dead wildlife, see the stream that goes down to farmers' fields or possibly drinking water. And all of a sudden that came to a complete halt right before I retired.
Well, so that's kind of the reason I asked, was the same question about, liaison or point of contact from your leadership at the height of your career doing that and the federal government. Was that communicated to Gavin Newsom at that time, and what was his response? I mean, did he shut that down, or what? Like, what was the...
All I know is it came from the governor's office. I'm assuming it came from him. And this is press information officers at your agency are going to put out statements. There was a big push to highlight legitimate cannabis. and reward good growers for doing things right and highlight this new registration of how they were going through the process and doing it organically, which was great. I mean, because there are some tier 1 cannabis growers that conserve water, more than the best water conservationists I've seen. There are good ways to do this. And we had a good percentage of them up in the Emerald Triangle, for example, that previously it would have been, oh no, what's Met doing? It's going to be, handcuffs, and no, it's handshakes and hugs today, guys, because you're legal. You're coming out of the dark, you're getting registered, and you're showing me the DEM certified way organically in the cannabis world, and it's not my expertise, but you're showing me how little water you're using, how pure this product is, and how wildlife is fine. Hunters can't do it any better. Conservationists in other realms can't do it any better than this. So yeah, this is how it should be done. And sadly, because with the black market going bananas, once the backlash of misdemeanor and infraction for juvenile cartel growers became a reality and they just overproduced and blew the black market up, most of those growers are gone. They've gone belly up. They can't afford to sustain. The black market's killing them, and they've kind of left the forest, if you will.
So did the governor's office direct you guys to cease and desist, basically? Is that...
As far as not operationally, but doing any media stuff, yeah,
Okay.
we were done doing it at a law enforcement side. It was now coming from press information officers that are deputy directors. They're not law enforcement. A PIO,
So he was supportive operationally of what you guys were doing,
Oh yeah,
but just not that it was being publicized at all.
it wasn't being publicized.
Do you know
at all.
why?
Because under sanctuary state and regulated cannabis, do we really want to talk about violent cartels running the weed trade in California, the violence we were seeing, the poisons we were seeing, showing that regulation, Mike, wasn't working. In fact, it didn't only not stop the black market, it incentivized the black market. It increased the black market. And when you're pushing for regulated cannabis for the money that's going to be generated, for the state coffers, the county coffers, everybody that's involved, not really looking at the ramifications of, I looked at it from an environmental standpoint, from a game warden's perspective first, and then of course, I started to see the public safety, which always supersedes everything. When we got into little towns like, counties like Siskiyou, Shasta, and any other Southern California county, anything rural, what was happening on the private land front, and I realized this isn't going to change, and no one's going to get allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's why, I don't disparage anybody in any of the books, and I'm not, going to disparage anybody, in a podcast, but I'm going to say, here's what happened, here's why, here's how it's happening to this day. And now I can speak about it, generically, and if not to save my old home state of California, but save the rest of the country, or at least prevent these states from making the same mistake when they do a regulation structure. Because if you don't have an embedded cartel presence in, say, the weed trade, and you regulate this way, you will. It's going to be a thing, not to mention the other cartel crimes we're talking about.
Right. Whether it's training a dog, leading a team, or building something from scratch, success isn't about having all the answers. It's about how you approach problems. That's why IDOU caught my attention. They're from the same folks behind the innovation powerhouse IDEO, and they've got online courses built for people like us, those who want to lead well, think strategically, and stay ahead without losing the human touch. Their new AI and design thinking programs are especially relevant right now. They teach a practical and hands-on way to pair AI with real-world leadership. It's helped me think differently, and I can see how teams in any high-stakes environment could benefit. Class starts soon, so enroll today. IDOU is offering my listeners 15% off site-wide. Go to idou.com/micdrop. That's IDEOU.com/micdrop for 15% off. One of the things that you've mentioned that I'm curious about in terms of the kind of soft power takeover as it relates to China and the financial influence or their goal of what seems like kind of trying to water down the U.S. dollar. I'm curious. I don't know if you mess around with crypto at all, but where and or if that plays any role in their ability to do that or an inability to do that if we bolster our economic systems with with crypto-backed financial and banking institutions or whatever. Do you have any knowledge or info or opinion on any of that?
Yeah, I don't know where the Chinese sit on crypto, but
Typically, they're pretty regulatory on it.
yeah,
But
they seem to be, like you're saying, kind of a regulatory direction, because that would kind of take their leverage to have billions of cash American dollars that they could later flip if they ever got to the financial clout through soft or, over or, and took over the world currency standard.
Yeah.
And then, obviously the American dollar would be so devalued, but they'd still have that converted. And they
Yeah.
just have a mass of it. And we're talking, we're already sitting in multi-billion-dollar industries what these cartels are involved in. And I'm sure the numbers are very conservative because we don't know what these guys are making.
yeah, to me, that's one of the big things about crypto that I wouldn't say necessarily worries me, but definitely makes me think and pause to try to understand, like at that level, like if hypothetically, globally, we switch to, whether it's Ripple or, any of the kind of bigger altcoins or even Bitcoin or whatever, just crypto generally speaking, if you were to kind of catapult that into the 21st century, the same way that, say, mail switched over to email
Right.
incredibly quickly.
Like a very distinct shift.
Yeah.
Where the practice and technology changed a way of life with it.
Yeah, because to me, and I'll be the first to admit, like I'm not a super educated on crypto. I'm by no means a guru. I have a general understanding of it. But to me, it seems like global Zelle without any banks involved. Is it like people can send and exchange money instantaneously from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world with nobody in between, which I think there's a lot of value in that. Where I am confused or don't really know how it would shake out is take this as an example. If you're talking about tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars of liquidity in cash that's not traceable through the IRS or through any type of non-laundered means, would China have an ability to take all of that and convert it into crypto through trading houses not in the United States and buy tons of crypto and now either water it down that way or have an ability to launder it easier or whatever. It just, to me, there's far more questions than there are answers. But I am curious, and it'll be fascinating to see what role and to what level crypto plays a role in money laundering and kind of the geopolitical currency wars that exist between all of the superpowers, because I do see value or almost strategic importance for the United States to be the first to do something like that, because I think it's inevitable. I do.
We have to.
Yeah, just like mail going to email is that, if all of the other countries do it way before we do, and we're kind of trying to play catch up, then I think that puts us monetary policy wise in an even bigger shitstorm. Do you have an opinion on any of that?
I agree with you 100%, brother. I see billions and billions of cash dollars undocumented under our U.S. standard in this black market of all these crimes, not just weed, anything. And we know, like you said, it's not being sent back to China mainland. They're doing it all here. Then they don't have issues. It can't be traced. And they do it right within America. And then if we do go to a crypto standard, which seems to be like the logical technology approach to the future of where we're going to go as a species, right? I think about, say the Star Trek world, right? Those people aren't exchanging dollars and, trading in for other countries' currency. There's probably the idea, a digital scale, a digital template, if you will, of what you have as far as an amount, and there is no middleman.
Yeah.
And it's encrypted and it's very protected in theory. It can't be penetrated. Obviously, you're not holding anything, so you're not vulnerable to, say, a strong arm robbery, perhaps. But I could just see how convenient that would be when paper money or any other monetary value, however we're quantifying that, just ends up going away and things are converted. Because it is the wave, and I'm not a big crypto guy either, but a couple of the guys on the team, my buddy Marcos, also call sign Sizzle, he's really trying to get me into crypto. He goes, dude, there's going to be a bull market coming up. It's the end of 2025. This is what it was. And I do know when I should have bought a Bitcoin for like $15,000 and they were 109K recently. And I went,
it's at 120 or almost 120.
well, now they're higher, right? And I go, and this isn't even the bull rush, but it's just so unorthodox
Yeah.
and it's so Wild West. I'm a little more conservative that way, but that's going to
Yeah.
stabilize with any type of, like you said, standard that comes out.
Well, yeah, I think, human nature or society, if you look at it like from a species standpoint, not just the, American citizens, there's a strange dichotomy of skepticism and hesitance that there's this like avalanche effect that the instant that switches, like it's this just domino effect because, take like, say an iPhone.
Yeah.
When that first came out, a lot of people were like, fucking touchscreen phone, nobody's going to want that.
No.
Like, that's not going to work.
And
then now, like, every motherfucker has one.
Yep.
And I think it's that same thing, that there's going to come a point far sooner than later where, like, that just makes sense. To me, Bitcoin at first, when it first came out, it didn't make sense. And it still kind of doesn't in terms of the utility aspect when you compare it to some of the other stuff, again, whether it's XRP or HBAR or
Right.
Ethereum or, some of the other bigger, more recognized, altcoins that actually do something. There's a purpose behind them, whereas Bitcoin is kind of this weird bastard child, yet still is the gold standard that dwarfs every other coin.
It's almost
by
like
landslide.
it's almost it's oxymoronic the way Bitcoin holds this value.
Yeah.
Yet it doesn't have a real structure and it doesn't seem,
Yeah.
it's going to have future stability compared to the ones you just
Yeah,
mentioned.
compared to some of the other ones. I mean, I remember hearing about Bitcoin in fucking 2011.
Crazy.
2010 rather, and,
Yeah.
and a buddy of mine was like, dude, he was telling me about it. I was like, that is dumb as fuck.
That makes no sense. Why would you?
Yeah, and he was like, dude, just put $100 in. And when he told me to put $100 in, they were 11 cents a coin at the time.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I mean, that's
No.
like 37 million fucking dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, not that I wouldn't have cashed it out way ahead of where we're at now.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck,
But still, what would your canine program look like with that? I mean, we'd be
dude,
doing
it would be in the Bahamas probably. You know? I mean,
you could remotely from your jet.
yeah, I'd be
and
cloning fucking 5,000 dogs a year probably. But as hard
Public
as it is,
safety and canines would benefit.
yeah, big time. So one of the things I wanted to ask about, and I know this doesn't directly relate to, or it's not a one-to-one relation to your background and even what you're doing now, but it's intricately related because we've talked about all of the impacts of illegal immigration, what it's had on the drug trade, and all of the work that you've done in it. And you've been very complimentary to Trump's administration now and kind of the heavy hand that they've been going after, whether, a combination of shutting the border down and doing a lot of raids and seem to have done a lot of good work. I am curious, though, from a policy standpoint, do you agree with how it's being done now, and would you change anything? And I'll kind of expand on that by saying specifically in that the people that they're going after, and you see a lot of these stories, and I don't know what the fuck to believe, honestly, because,
Right.
I mean, there's so many agendas and angles, and there's AI, and, it's like it's hard to kind of sift through how many legitimate victims there are of, people that are being rounded up incorrectly or unwarranted wise, and getting in this weird gray area of getting fucked over unnecessarily or whatever. I know that it's happening. To what extent, that's what's hard to shake out because both sides are exaggerating. I think on one side you have people exaggerating how little it's happening, and on the other end you have people exaggerating on how often it's happening. What is your take on how it's being done, because it's so related to all of the things that you're kind of knee-deep in working on right now?
Man, thanks for asking that, because that's a near and dear one for a couple of reasons. Where I grew up in California, little town of San Martin, equestrian, farm town, very near Gilroy, the garlic capital of the world. That's what that little part of the Silicon Valley suburbs are known for. And I went to school with a lot of non-citizen kids. I picked fruit for a side job in my preteens with a ton of undocumented kids and adults. And I think for all the effort we're putting into border control and stopping the cartels and the trafficking and, protecting our public safety, why can't a nation of our power and the light speed, literally warp drive, Trump can move stuff for good causes, like he's done on the border in the first 100+ days, why can't we streamline our immigration policy? Why can't, as we're rounding up undocumented individuals that may have been here for 20 years, they don't have a criminal record, right? They just want to chase the American dream. I've been neighbors with them growing up. Still, when I'm in California, I run across that a ton. You don't see a ton of that where I'm at in Montana, but some. That's America. That's the melting pot. These are folks that are here for all the right reasons. I'm an immigrant. We all have immigrant backgrounds. I think that's what makes this amazing. So with this border protection and protecting our nation within, we also have to make our nation better within with the people that belong here and are here for the right reasons. And I don't know why we haven't sped up this process, because it's still very difficult, very arduous, very time consuming. And then I look at the resource aspect of, okay, so I know we're rounding up a lot of people with criminal histories, and I agree with you. I don't know what to read on the numbers, on the agenda. And I don't know about you, but social media in general, for me, I'm on it less and less because it messes up my day with the AI figures and different announcements I saw. And I go, do I really have time to research this for validity? Because this is a key point to like what you and I are discussing, brother. I might want to bring this up with Mike, but I saw 50 different reports that varied it. So we need to streamline immigration, and we need to keep the country what it is based on immigrants, man. And I would like to see that. I think it's very possible if we made that a priority. More of a two-pronged approach to what we're doing on border protection and basically trying to exterminate or exfil all of the cartel elements and the impacts they're having on this soft and in many ways very hard power they're exercising, because they kind of have, up until the administration changed, they kind of had free reign of the park. It was pretty stupid. I'll give the current administration a lot of credit for that, but it doesn't negate what you just said. And I don't know how you feel, but I think I see the reality. And Texas is a state that has so much.
I mean, for me, step one is getting my arms around the actual facts.
What are the numbers?
I mean, because that does matter. To me, seeing some videos, and again, like, I'm assuming they're real. Fuck, maybe they're not. I don't know. But I think where most people struggle with kind of a full endorsement of what is being done and how it's being done is the let's say there's a targeted package or operation that's saying, hey, we're going after X number of MS-13 guys or known violent criminals, and there's 17 of them or whatever in this neighborhood or house or whatever, and they do a raid on it and they net 70 people, and there's 20 of them that don't have any of that background, that are just, their one crime is that they're here illegally. And, so to me, I think that's where there's the biggest argument, is treating those people the same way that you're treating an MS-13 guy that's, 3-time convicted murder guy or a pedophile or whatever is wrong. Now, I don't think that there should be a free pass, no different than if you or I go to any other country on the planet.
Right.
And
we got to go through some
and
steps.
Break their immigration laws. Like, they're going to handle it how they handle it. And if you're in the wrong, you're in the wrong. However, I do see a filtering process of saying, hey, the people who, we know you're a criminal past the original crime of coming here illegally. Anything beyond that, to me, is a no-brainer. Is they go to wherever the fuck they're putting them. Whether it's sending them to El Salvador, to that huge institution, or sending them back to the country of origin. I mean, whatever it is, to me, that's an easy decision.
Right.
What's not an easy decision
is when they're not that person.
Is the other people. Now, again, I don't think it should be, you're not on the list, you're free to go. But I also don't think that you should be treated like these people who have cut people's heads off and molested children either. There needs to be a more clear-cut plan on what to do and how to do the processing and ultimately where you kind of put those people. I don't know what that right answer is. One problem I do have, you're going to say something?
Oh, no, because you're on a great point.
Well,
and go
Well,
ahead.
the biggest problem I actually do have is when I see a lot of the ICE agents, and I fully support what they're doing, again, with the exception of how to handle the non-criminal element that we already talked about. What I do see as a problem is not so much the mask. I don't think that it's fair to say these guys can't wear masks when they're doing their job. However, I do think that there should be a very specific and uniform. Like I see a lot of these guys, they're wearing fucking black T-shirts and fucking cargo pants or jeans. Like to me that is bullshit, because what's to keep any group of fucking hoodlums from just dressing that way and fucking kidnapping people or robbing banks, or I mean, who knows what. Yeah. So I do think that, like, if I was tasked with cleaning that up, is one, having a very clear-cut directive from the very top of saying, here is the gray area person, here's how you process them, here's where they're going to go, here's kind of the plan with those people and how to deal with it that's different from the hardened criminals. But I also think there needs to be a standardized uniform that is very, very visible and overt, that says, ICE and has specific markings in a lot of different places. I do think that that's a good idea. And I don't think that compromises anybody's facial recognition or whatever. I don't agree with making them demask, but I do agree with making them identify themselves in a very, very almost obnoxiously overt manner to help people understand who the fuck is who.
I agree with you 100%, and that's something we had on the Met team. I mean, when you're getting completely camoed out, and we had 3 or 4 different variants of camos for the hunt we would do in wooded terrain, face mask, face paint. But what if that's a rival cartel gang member? What if that's an entity that isn't law enforcement? But we had our monikers. We made sure when we were in contact distance, police, game warden, front and back, there's a point that you don't have to be secret anymore. It's not going to compromise it if your field craft is right and your camo just enough. And I agree absolutely. This is such a hotbed issue on the sensitivity nature of it. It's like, what does Jalisco New Generation look like when they do a press release? How are they dressed when they're with 50 cals and armored, APCs, just like those ICE agents? Masks, black hoods, looking kind of black gangster style. So I think we're kind of, you hit it on the head. We're giving a message that is exactly the person we're trying to combat on the cartel front. But I'm curious, breaking it down with you right here, I think you're onto something of, we don't quite know how that processing is going to go. So we have that ag family, right, say in San Martin, California, and they are, maybe 2 generations undocumented, and all they've done is work their tail end off on a ranch, a farm, great people, kids have gone to school together, harmless and just good people to be around. But we find them now under this new regime, and we're going to go ahead and, document everybody that's here illegally, find out, is everybody paying their fair share? Are you documented? Are you under a tax or whatever? Do we send them all the way back and go through an immigration process that hopefully gets streamlined, or do we detain for now, sort them out with character backgrounds, and go through a process where we don't have the red tape of going back to, say, Mexico or El Salvador, but now they're going to be here and they're going to reintegrate, but they're going to go through some steps. I don't know, but doesn't that kind of seem like we should cut the resource expenditure if they're going to qualify anyway down the road? Agreed.
To me,
at least,
to me, that there can't be no consequence. There has to be something.
There has to be something, for sure. I agree with you.
We could, spend hours or days or weeks, trying to determine what's an appropriate consequence. But
I agree.
I don't think that, again, to strongly reiterate that they should be thrown in the same category as gangbangers who have been trafficking children and whatever else. To me, the frustrating part about it is that, the current administration really ran very heavily on doing that, and I see a lot of justification. Well, they're doing what they said they would do, what they were going to do. Agreed. but the way that they're doing it, I think, is just a misstep because they could be doing a much better job where they're getting a lot more unanimous support across all kind of factions of society than they're getting. You know, there's always going to be people that, if you're taking away their good deal and you're catching them doing something wrong, of course they're going to disagree with what you're doing, how you're doing it, and there's not a way to appease those people. But, you know, I do think that there's a significant contingent in this country that feels pretty similar to exactly the way we do and kind of what we're talking about, and that, you know, I just think they're kind of stepping on their own dick a little bit by doing it the way that they're doing it. Not to say that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I just think there's a better process that they could be adhering to that would make everybody happier, frankly. But
no, I think you're spot on. It's something we always had to deal with in the politics of California, being a tactical team of our type. It was a contradiction, and I think I mentioned that had, you know, Mike Carrion, one of my mentors, who was the chief for 2 years, and his belief in us, that team doesn't ever get made. Yeah. I mean, that was one of those, I really like a divine moment where you have 18 months in the history of this state. For the next 20, 30 years, this team will never be built because it's absolutely exposing something the politics of the state don't want to expose: embedded cartels, right? Sanctuary state. Let's not talk about them. We're not going to talk to ICE. We're not going to deport. We're not going to prosecute. You leave them alone. You don't share information with your federal brothers, but you're still putting up numbers and showing a level of public safety and environmental decimation that we can't ignore. So keep on going. But it was always about optics, you know, and I know even on the military side, even in special operations, some of these horror stories in special operations, whether it be SEALs, Delta, whatever, optics, mainland, how we're doing different business, you know, across the world, or how something can be misinterpreted. And I think this particular situation is doing exactly what I thought would not happen when you started to secure the border and you started to really go after the cartels. I've seen a lot of unity. I don't see left or right. No one's complaining about that. But the way this thing with what we're doing with the people that don't fit that hardcore criminal category, we're kind of in the divisiveness we had in civil unrest and COVID era, and we're going backwards, I think, to Pony, on your point, there has to be a better way.
Yeah, because to that point, like I see some eerie and disturbing parallels between, you know, federal agents that are storming beaches because you don't have your mask on and you're not supposed to be here. And,
right.
You know, it's like, well, you're breaking the law because we made this law that says that you can't do it. And it's like, those things are too close to being the same thing for me to just say, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing and turn a fucking blind eye to it.
Yeah, and it's not working.
No, I mean, to be fair, I do think that they've done amazing work with expelling a shitload of really bad people that had no business being here, and I don't think anybody wants here. You know, but it's kind of like, you know, like you're casting this huge net, and it's like, oh, well, there's these other people that, you know, weren't on our list, but, you know, they weren't supposed to be here, so we're just lumping them all together, and I just think that that's a problem, but. I have kind of a list of I won't say random questions, but they're a little all over the place. They all intertwine into stuff we've been talking about. But
cool.
From a flow of the interview standpoint, is there anything else that you want to talk about since the last time you've been on the books, what you've been up to, and anything that I haven't asked you that I should have before I kind of get into that laundry list?
You know, I mean, just the basic mission has always been outreach and education, and did not see it coming. You know, when Hidden War was published and that happened, I didn't anticipate this type of awareness and this type of passion on such a PR level, you know, a media level, you know, your podcast being one of many great examples of it. But just in general, how unifying the message is, from the standpoint of the grower side and the left and the right, we all come to kind of an agreement when we talk about environmental destruction and water poisoning and polluting. It seems to hit everybody, you know. If we don't all fall under the same, say, religious or non-religious doctrine or believe in a deity or don't, one thing we seem to really love is wildlife and animals. And I just see this passion, and with dogs especially, right? Canines or not. It's just a crazy thing of how much unity and hope I've seen from that standpoint. I know one of the things that it's related from the standpoint of bringing a little bit of levity, bringing a little bit of joy. We talked about COVID, people getting in the outdoors, breathing again, not feeling as depressed, having some hope, getting some strength. And I know you're a guitar player. I've been following that.
Barely.
Yeah, but you got good guitars, and you're doing. I saw you pulling off some Metallica riffs at one point, and I went, okay, so
Pulling off is a stretch.
you sounded good.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But to that point, I know we love the same type of music, and right about the time, just right before we did that first interview together 6 years ago, some real good friends of mine up in Montana had a rock band that was about six years deep. Area 56, classic rock, immensely talented. And they hit me up knowing I had a musical background, like right when meth started. This is like 2013, we're doing a pilot program. Now my dad's terminal, he's going through that. We're starting the team, so 2013 was one of those like major victory, major joys, major tragedy, major loss, because now I'm losing dad 2 months before I go operational with the pilot program for this dream team. And at the same time, I get asked to join this rock band because the drummer and band manager is also one of the best commercial and residential painters in the area and does all the building for uncles and aunts that, all over, our spread. And I said, man, it'd be a dream come true to play rock and roll music with you guys, at least try out. I'm rusty. It's been a long time. I've been focusing on the LE side. I said, if the band's there and you guys are still rolling, when I retire, let's try it. And sure enough, 2 weeks after retirement in 2018, on New Year's Eve that night at a VFW of all places, they were playing a New Year's Eve gig, and I jumped up and sang a Rush cover, New World Man, because they said, you're going to pick one song out of our set list. And I can tell you right now, man, not too many things freak me out or really scare me a little bit. But when I listened to the first set and a half of that band rock, and I know Josh is a drummer or is a painter. I've never seen him drum before. And they're crushing these 80s and 90s classics. I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I want to do this tonight. But I got pushed up there and kicked in the butt by the right people. Yeah. And we had a good time. I met the guys. Hadn't met the lead guitarist, Mike. Hadn't met Seth, our bassist. And at the time, Mike, this band is playing 4-hour sets, 40 to 45 songs a night. And they're a three-piece. And they're all singing individual songs all night long. And they're like, we've always wanted a lead singer, maybe somebody that can help on keyboards, if you do that. And I just started kind of hanging out and, singing a couple of songs here and there. And now, 7th year, and lead singer and singing 80% of the songs and, trying to expand my alternate percussion and keyboards and samples and stuff like that. And that's been an uplifter. Yeah. That's been a joy because when COVID was at its peak and lockdowns were all over states like California, we were starting to, in Montana, it was distance, it wasn't mass, especially in our little county, but then gigs started to happen again. And we were on about probably a good year that none of those, and we have a big contingent of local bands that are good, blues, country, not a lot of rock. We're the one rock band there that kind of tour that area. But that has been a lot of fun. Yeah. And not only a lot of fun, but it just it promotes a joyous feeling. People let their hair down. You make friends. You don't think about this intense stuff you and I are fighting every day in the message, if not operationally. And it also recharges my batteries to jump back in and start looking at our next enemy we got to tackle to keep this keep this country great. For sure. But that's been something that's been really cool. And I wanted to, not only share that, but also your musical interest and seeing your guitars and just what you're into and what you like, and just share that, music lover to music lover.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, it's definitely a big kind of blow off valve, I guess. Are you going to go full Axl Rose and start mic stands stomping people in the audience? Or
no, I'm not that crazy. I jump up and down. I get pretty jumpy, but I don't usually leave the stage.
Where does Area 56 come from?
Okay, that's a great question. So we are the 56th county of 56 counties in Montana. We're the smallest county. There's only 20,000 people in it. We're the most remote county. There's a lot of UFO sightings. There's a big Sasquatch presence, allegedly, by a lot of people, relatives that have seen it, heard it, or at least the lure is there.
That's just me with my shirt off running around drunk. That's all that is.
Okay, so you have been up there, and you didn't let me know you're in town. Next time you play Squatch and start a whole little thing, you got to stop by. No, but so because of that, the Area 51 link, and then the Area 56 became 56 because of the county. And then when I got in the band, of course, we started talking about, different logos and different graphics. And on some of my social media, you'll see it's kind of an alien hiding behind the state of Montana with a saucer, and there's a drum set, and then a microphone, and there's that little star. And I actually had a thin green line style Montana flag made with Area 56 in it. And the guys are really cool with it. So we kind of had a quasi-patriotic thin green line thing going on, but a band thing at the same time, and then our other logo. And we just started to dive into stuff like that when it was the four of us. And they were super stoked that, okay, now I'm going to sing maybe a song or two a night, and I'm going to shred lead and rhythm on my guitar. And Mike, other Mike, present Mike included, another guitar player, Mike is an amazing guitarist. I mean, he's been playing since he's 12 years old. Wow. I call him Captain 2.5 because he's an incredible singer. He elevated my singing game. And when I'm singing lead, he and I harmonize on a lot of stuff. But because we don't have a rhythm guitar player, he will morph parts where he's putting rhythm in and chord progressions and still shred like a Warren D. Martini solo from a Rat song we do in Encore. And then he's going to sing a little. And our bassist is phenomenal. He can chase around Pearl Jam. He can chase around Metallica. He can mimic Geddy Lee from Rush. He can play that part almost right on when we start doing songs like that. So the challenge has been there.
When you guys harmonize, who's higher?
I'm the higher singer in the band.
All right, so I have a request then.
Yeah.
Hunger Strike by Temple of the Dog with you doing the Chris Cornell part.
Oh man, I'd have to falsetto it probably.
That's all right.
But the thing that's crazy is when we do 4 sets of music at a full show, my voice can hit highs if I'm having a good night the whole night, but if there's any fatigue, I got to watch that set list and go, I'm going to do Zombie by Cranberries, but I'm going to do it in Dolores's octave and crush that. And then I've got to sing Nothing Else Matters. I've got to do Enter Sandman later because we do 2 Metallica covers. And now I'm going to do Geddy Lee, and I'm going to do some of those later in life not so highs. Yeah. And then Mike will start going high.
Yeah. Well, I find that if you take a wooden bar stool and sit on your nuts, it gives you that falsetto capability way better.
I don't know. I think I'm going to start singing lower songs because this does not sound like a fun gut punch.
Yeah, I can't sing to save my life, but the Area 56 thing is interesting. You could do some T-shirts like we're 5 levels deeper than Area 51 or something.
We could. We're the bottom 6.
Get you some bumper stickers.
6th level. Yep.
All right, question list time. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Again, they're all related. They're just they don't kind of flow as much as some of the stuff we've been talking about. But I saw a bullet that said operators are now harvesting intel from Instagram and TikTok footage of grow sites. Have you heard of that? Or have you guys started to integrate, or have you been integrating open source intel into planning? Where do you see that heading, if anywhere at all?
Yeah, man, I've never been asked that. And that's a fantastic question because I've got a lot of followers that largely started to get generated when I was on your first show, the first time talking to you, and then it just grew with other appearances and then doing our own podcasts. And now I get guys that are putting stuff up on social media, but it's a grow site cleanup, say Ventura County, and they're like, yeah, I know it's not active. I've read the book. I understand the warning signs, but this water diversion is still in play. Had we not got it today, and they're doing they're just doing it themselves. They're going out as concerned citizens and they're going and doing a reclamation op. And I'm like, be careful. That's cool. I'm really glad you guys are doing it. And I do get the location. And sometimes I find that it's not one that we may have been aware of, right? And so at least the very minimum we're going to do is we're going to put it on our radar. And probably I'll send a message to the new team leader or a call or something and have somebody go and look at it. And a lot of that stuff, ironically, is stuff we've done that have been taken from our documentaries and some of the material I've put up, and I see some of my same stuff getting regenerated into, there might be a quote from me on your first show and Joe Rogan saying something crazy, 116 bites from Phoebe, and then military. I had this crazy TikTok reel put up that said Special Ops Military Canine Phoebe, based on our experiences, and it was a completely different dog from a different operator that could have been anything from a SEAL team guy in a wooded environment, or it could have been one of us in the Emerald Triangle. And it was a complete fictitious version because Phoebe got kind of notorious and she got somewhat of a following with Wild Justice, with the book, and then especially with you at your expertise level with canines based on our first conversation. And people are sending me this from agency and like Foundation, Wildlife Officer Foundation founding members are like, hey, is this your stuff? Did you make this? I'm like, no, I haven't seen this before. That's just my footage. This image of this operator isn't anything I put up or any of the sanctioned documentaries we did. And why are they calling this dog Phoebe? Because they're making a link back to me. So again, somebody just, capitalizing on something cool, and it had a good purpose. It wasn't, anything that was going to be a problem, but I get mixed up and people confuse that this stuff has something to do with me putting it up, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. I guess in that same, I guess it's not really related, but in terms of the adaption of some of the military groups that you've worked with, and as you were setting up the MET team and getting your feet wet, so to speak, in developing tactics and procedures, did you have a actual dedicated process to unpackaging military tactics and adapting them to civilian law enforcement in the United States? Because obviously there's a ton of parallels and a lot of the tactics are either the same or similar, but there's also some pretty significant differences that, things that you can absolutely do as a military member overseas that you can't do. Did you have kind of a checklist or a gatekeeping process that allowed you to take some of the stuff you were learning from the military and apply it to national law enforcement?
Absolutely. And because MET was such an outdoor, operate as far in the backcountry as possible without support, we kind of took a model, a playbook from the SEAL teams and from any special operations, tier 1, tier 2 group. Having a 20-year veteran of the SEAL teams, 9 active, 11 reserves, and a sniper who is now a game warden that I got to recruit for the team, and is now actually the chief of the cannabis enforcement program before he pulls the plug, Frog, as he's called in the book. But when Frog joined the team, and then what Rumble, right, and Canine Phoebe had developed, even though it wasn't officially military training, they were basically mimicking small group, small assault team, small apprehension team tactics with a QRF that could be of any necessary size depending on the environment and any given distance that is safe and practical to be effective from the assault or the point team, if you will, the apprehension team. A lot of that came right out of the playbook you guys would do on the SEAL teams. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and with that, was there a particular methodology that you used to recruit guys for that unit that had no military background and trying to bridge that gap between pretty similar or specific military tactics to the civilian environment? Was that a challenge?
It was in the beginning, not as much of a challenge as it is now, and this is why. When we got the green light to start the MET team, there were a good handful of us statewide doing district patrol traditional game warden work that were already integrating into like sheriff's office, marijuana eradication teams, and the more progressive ones. Shasta County was one of them. They were a hunting team with a bunch of military veterans or guys who'd been SWAT operators from a rural county, Fresno County Sheriff, Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, who I've given shout outs, and I'm glad we're bringing it up again. Those guys took up me and my original group of Santa Clara County game wardens, guys like Marcos, guys like myself. When you're in the Bay Area and you're in the Silicon Valley, but you're working the hills around it, and you have some tier 1 SWAT teams known in the country for being some of the best, And now you're getting invited, you can go to their sniper school, you can go to their SWAT operator school, you can go to their submachine gun school, tactical tracking. And you're a game warden going to this thing, and they're like, what are the Bird and Bunny cops doing here? And then you show up and you perform really well, and you just play all team, and we perform, and we broke down those barriers of what game wardens were perceived as really right after 9/11. When 9/11 went down, Mike, I knew at some point, I had no idea it would be a cartel cannabis fighting team on the environment necessarily, or that would be our targeted focus. I knew we were going to need a special ops unit of some capability because of terrorists, because of active shooter. It was going to happen, and that's what's happened. Look at Texas game wardens. High-speed, low-drag group of game wardens in the state of Texas. Florida has like 3 to 5 SOG teams because they're so spread out. They were doing it way before we were because of Hurricane Katrina, floods, fugitives getting into, say, the Everglades. What I had the benefit of, and again, I consider this just perfect timing. This is in the big man's plan because everybody's still here. They haven't retired. They haven't gone to other agencies. We had Frog, for one, who was going to be with the agency coming from DOJ after leaving the teams. And he just wants to be a game warden and do the game warden job, and now he's going to go operational, and he loved that, and blessed to have him. Great guy. And those of us that didn't have a military background, I was already an intermediate and an advanced and a basic sniper instructor. I wasn't with an agency, but I had been brought in, I had been trained by the sheriffs, by San Jose Merge teams, some really good teams, and just dove in. I said, if I never use it, it's a great skill to know because I like to shoot a rifle anyway. And if I ever have to do this just for family and community in the situation we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, I want that skill set, and I just want to be as good as I possibly can on this tool that I use. So I had that background. I had all the certifications and was training military special forces snipers coming into our advanced sniper school out of Santa Clara County, where you could go into a rural thing and we'd have a whole day field exercise of a meth lab fugitive, in a little wildlife area shack, and you're going to go set up and do the observations, do the takedown. You're going to train at the time. You couldn't shoot on the West Coast past 300 yards in a basic sniper school, and we had to open that up to 600 yards, which now is not that far. Yeah. But this was before the 1,000-yard plus super shoots. And we had a lot of guys doing that. Rumble and Phoebe, what they learned through trial and error, being really the first dog and handler team to ever do that type of job. And I think I talked to you about this. It wasn't all, roses, man, and ice cream cones. It was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of missed deployments. It was about a 2.5-year process to condition a Belgian Mal in that environment, in that heat, being that quiet for that long, without support. And that's just a testament to that dog and that dang handler. Yeah.
Was there a single biggest challenge to developing the MET team and sniper force?
Once I had the green light from the chief, operationally there wasn't a challenge, but perception and internal politics and external politics. Externally, it was like, okay, what is this game warden team going to be? What are they really here for? Why are they doing this? Why isn't it DEA? Why isn't it FBI? Why isn't it the sheriff's team dedicated just to this with not just a couple of Met guys where they borrow SWAT for a mission, but now they're going to take an entire SWAT element of maybe 24 operators and medical trauma doctors that the big agencies had all over the Bay Area. I mean, we got resources. So they had really good teams, and now dedicate that fight. So there was a little bit of territorial stuff where the sheriff might go, yeah, I like that they're helping you. I know you guys have a tight bond, but that should be us. I can't, and I feel like the game wardens are doing it, and now we're kind of looking bad. That was just kind of the perception of some of the politics back then. I remember that. And internally, again, change is inevitable, growth is optional. And like old dogs, military law, domestic law enforcement, whatever, when we're really comfortable in something and we want to go into the discomfort and do something that's never been done before, and we're going to lose. And these guys that are on the team, these are the 1%ers. They're warden of the year. They've made killer cases. They've done tons for the community. They're highly decorated. So imagine being the lieutenant or the captain in, say, Redding, California, and you have massive poaching in the Emerald Triangle, unrelated to even cannabis. and you're losing your best 3 game wardens because they just got recruited on this new tactical unit for marijuana, what are we doing?
Right.
And there was about 2 years of that.
Yeah.
So when we were running initial operations, we just kind of ran silent and ran deep, and we kind of, do the best we could and always have best positive relations with the local wardens, guys that we had worked next to, and now we're coming in to do just maybe the Met stuff. And as soon as people saw the numbers, and as soon as they realized this isn't, the ninja team coming in to take over your district, get camos on, come on a scout with us, your district, this is your backyard. And the unique thing about a game warden is we have a particular district, the car goes home, you have your phone, you have your computer, you have a home office because you have to literally get out your front door and be right there. So you're very close to the community, unlike a beat cop that might check in, live 100 miles away in a totally different city. So when we're embedding with those resident game wardens, young or old, and we're still the same old partner, we're just giving them more capabilities, then the relationship started to get great. And then when the numbers got put up, and I only put, the first 6 years of numbers in Hidden War right in the letter jacket, and people go, okay, we can't argue that.
Yeah.
This isn't garbage collecting. This isn't just cutting plants, some, naturally grown plant. This is huge environmental damage. And these are very, very, evil and very dangerous people doing it. And now the Met team, I'm glad you brought this question up because I didn't think of going here, but a lot of private land support, right? A lot of really dangerous grow sites that on the threat matrix have guard dogs, they have weapons, you don't know, because you got cartel elements, but everybody can drive to it. So that's good and bad, right? They can have a lot more firepower. They can be a lot more formidable in, say, a hoop house on a private little piece of property that they can two-track to, versus if we get them in a remote canyon grow site, in a satellite kitchen or something, and we have our SOP kind of and our intel locked on of how we're going to do this, especially with some fantastic dogs. We can contain that, ironically, in a more remote area with less support than sometimes we can in some of the more populated rural communities if we don't have a ton of guys there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which leads me to another question I had about, I don't know if you heard in Washington State, there's a reported former Army Ranger who's accused of killing his 3 daughters and is on the run, and there's a manhunt. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that begs the question. I think it's a natural assumption to think that a guy with that background is probably going to wind up in areas that you guys would be working in and patrolling and whatever. Jurisdiction-wise and kind of bulletin or alert-wise, when something like that would come across your desk, or in this case, if you're in that area and you're running shit, what is your response? Like, how would you go about trying to locate that guy, and what do you think of that whole thing?
Yeah, no, that's a textbook example of what Met was designed for. We are designed to be that type of team, just like you guys, on the element to handle kind of any mission within rural or urban, but especially urban, on the run, deadly guy, potentially with skills. That's when Met comes in. Not only the snipers, but the canines, and everybody on Met, even if you're not on snipers, they're spotters. We're cross-training everybody to get, multiple skill sets. And that's going to be the type of teams you want out there in those rural areas. And ironically, that guy's allegedly been seen not too far from where I live in Montana.
Oh, wow.
Just now in Idaho, he's been moving east. And it made me think of, I believe it was first year of COVID, I finally got the People magazine copy from Shang, the team leader that replaced me last year. There was a whole People article on it. I don't know if you're familiar, but up in, I believe it was El Dorado County, a father, I think he was a dentist, might have been a doctor, and he's with his son, and they're just side by side exploring during the pandemic. And we had a killer on the loose that had stolen some cars, had done a bunch of damage, and basically got up next to these guys and shot and killed this young man's father in front of him. Wow. And the kid got out, and now he's on the run with no resources, a cell phone that's dying, and we were the one team, and Shang's now running it, that he brought the canine assets and Delta team especially, and found that kid, tracked him, got him out. He was okay. It had been a day or day and a half, I believe. And then that fugitive on the run was then had engagements with one of our game wardens and I believe some other officers. But that was exactly what our team needed to be doing. And that just goes to, if I'm the team leader and back in those days, I'm going to call the county sheriff right away and talk to their tactical command staff and go, guys, we're here to help. Yeah. Wherever you can plug us in, let's go. And a lot of times, unless they've worked with us before, again, just on face value, well, territorially, do I really want to have, the fish and game marijuana enforcement team here? Or, do I want to do it our way? And do I want to bring in, other SWAT assets that I'm familiar with from adjoining counties or adjoining cities? But over the years now, and, Met's going on, 12th, 13th year, the relationships have been built. And one thing we're really good at doing as game wardens is the verbal judo, that communication, because we know how spread out we are. And we know, it's a little bit intimidating to hear about your local game ward and now all of a sudden there's this, high-speed tactical unit coming in, and are you going to, take something over? Are you not going to be able to work? Are we not going to be able to work together effectively because we don't train all the time together? But you know what I'm finding? Tactically now, and I see it in California, definitely see it in Texas, see it in Florida, Montana too, getting to know those guys now that I'm up there. Tactics are getting pretty universal, and the standard of training in general, whether it be firearms, defensive tactics, or operating on the fly without support, or being out there for 2-3 days, especially in these rural mountain states. If you're not a Montana or even a California game warden with at least 3 days of supplies ready to live off the grid, you probably ought to switch up what's in your truck and be ready, and then train tactically to encounter this guy on the run.
Have you guys worked with BORTAC guys before?
I never did personally. I've talked to guys that are connected with BORTAC.
It seems like a pretty similar skill set. 'Cause I've
Very
seen
much.
on a federal level, BORTAC being utilized for a lot of escaped fugitives from prisons that are high risk or whatever, and they've done a pretty bang up job grabbing them. But it seems like their training and skill set and the Met team is pretty similar that way.
BORTAC is fantastic, and I know that the Texas game wardens work with BORTAC a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the patrol boats that your fish and game department, you guys got some badass SWIC boats, man.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, on the game warden front, patrolling that river. And I know when all those, when we were just in the last administration, the flooding, and not only in apprehending certain individuals that they had to, but more or less just drowning victims, and all that horror that was going on down there with these people pushing across and 1 to 2 drownings a day. Those game warden patrol boats, we couldn't have enough boats on that crazy river. So they're definitely integrating down here with that. And sometime I'm sure I'm going to work with those guys at a conference, or, I'd love to get to know more about them, but I haven't been able to work with them directly, but I know they're great. And the Border Patrol guys down here, of course, that aren't on BORTAC speak very highly of them, but it's the guys up on the Alberta border that I've heard from, all on that Montana border, that were deployed down here a lot through that last 4 years, and then going back home and going, oh man, I don't want to go do that again. But they got the opportunity to see BORTAC in action, and that team is wired right.
Right. Man, it's been damn good catching up with you. Anything else you want to, I guess, bring up, talk about, or anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
No, man, as always, you throw a lot of good stuff. I can't tell you how many times I have told not only operational friends, but other podcast hosts that are friends as well. And they always ask me, like, well, it's good to have you talk about all this. You seem familiar with it. And I go back to that first one with you. And I go back to walking into your studio and seeing the hardbound copy of edition 1, and like that yellow legal paper, tons of it in every page, and marks, and you had tabs, and I went, damn, freaking Ritland has done some research. I mean, it's like an edit, and you were so intricate in those questions for a team that nobody knew about. And I am grateful, brother, that 1, you took the time to dive in, 2, you support it, and I can't tell you what a positive effect that has had. And I've had a lot of people, and I kid you not, go, you know what? I hope you and Mike do another podcast. I really hope you guys talk again. I mean, there's just so much. You guys had such a great time, and I was new to it. I was like, just starting to, spill some of the beans, let's say, right? So really grateful for you having me. Always great to communicate. I know we've stayed in touch and seen each other a few times since then, but to dive in with this is a real honor and a treat. And just thanks for helping promote it, man. You are definitely a big part of the thin green line, not only in the military front, but on the wildlife, waterways, and wildland front as well, brother. And I appreciate you.
Well, man, it's humbling to hear you say that, and truly an honor and a pleasure to do it. I hope the second one can live up to the first one, although it's tough to not be able to do the same thing with another book. But I hope the listeners enjoy me talking to you as much as I do, because it's always a real pleasure to pick your brain and hear your different opinions and viewpoints on things that are so relevant and continue to be so with our society. So again, I appreciate you taking the time to come down and talk.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I do have I didn't have this the last time, so I do have a coin, and next time you got.
Oh, dude. Oh, you do have a coin. I am not going to take it.
And next time, should you find yourself with a pair of shit kickers on up in Montana?
Oh, my gosh. Let me... You know what? I always collected challenge coins before retirement.
Yeah.
And they were just stacked up, in the drawer, in the safe, whatever. But I really started paying a lot more attention and really collecting them hardcore after I pulled the plug operationally. And then... this means the world, to have something from you, from the coin. And I have a very special coin we talked about, a handful left, that I will send you.
I appreciate it.
Oh, man, this is great. This is, you got the mic and everything. It's mic drop, babies. Yeah. That is bad to the bone.
And then in that white box, I don't know how big you are into shit kickers up in,
oh, no.
It's kind of a confusing box to open, but yeah, so.
Okay, all right. This is a mic drop, like rodeo bucking champion buckle. So this catalyzes something I got to talk to you about that did not come up in the conversation. So what people don't realize is, and thank you for this, this is extra special because this is going to make sense. And there's some people I'm going to share this with, some good, very close friends. I consider them family. Last of the generation of working cattle women and cattle men in the Silicon Valley foothills where I grew up. And they all have their fair share of these winning buckles, and they are the true cowboys like you'd see here in Texas or Montana. But something I started doing a lot of, especially the last couple of years, since I'm not really hunting two-legged predators so much anymore operationally, is going after four-legged predators, i.e. the coyotes, things like the canines, going after cattle calves, on the last remaining cattle industry we have. But also we have the tule elk there in that part of, California is where the only tule elk live for the entire world. There's only 5,200 of them.
Oh, wow.
So they're on the threatened potential endangered species list. They are the smallest in body size to the Roosevelt and the and the Rocky Mountain. And here they are literally on a stone's throw from cartel grows we've had on them. We get poaching. You got the San Jose Bay Area. You got gangbangers trying to spotlight them. So I've gone to these really challenging hunts, midwinter, midsummer, doesn't matter, on foot, on vehicle, just to put some pressure on these coyotes. And you want to talk about a tough target to hit, long or short range, as crafty as those canines are.
Yeah. It's
been a heck of a challenge, but in an area that just isn't getting hit any pressure on them, the amount of calves, and especially the elk and the cattle, were having they were impacting them significantly. So being able to help my, cowboys and cattle families is just an amazing opportunity, and have enough time to do that, because I don't think everybody in America realizes how hard these folks work to put food on the table, and not to mention that they are really kind of a dying ethos, if you will.
Sure.
And it's just going away everywhere, and it's heartbreaking. So I'm holding on to that as long as I possibly can. And in the time I do still spend in California for things like this and outreach and family and friends or whatever, I spend as much time starting to go to brandings again. And the logic of wrestling a calf that's a teenager size and fighting him by hand is still doesn't work for me, because I get rolled on my ass way too many times, Mike. But and then I got the patriarch and the matriarch of the family, my friends under the Fields Cattle Company, going, "It's all right. You're new to it. You'll get it. You'll balance again. Get that front." I'm like, "You're not supposed to wrestle animals like this. Usually you're like tranquilizing them, or they're like big game that we're harvesting, and we're going to take them home. But it's a beautiful way of life, man.
That's awesome. Well, now next time you do it, you'll fit right in. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna wear this ridiculously, shamelessly.
Good.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you again for coming. I appreciate it. It's been great as always. To the listener, I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. If you didn't, you can go ahead and choke yourself. And until next time,
I was waiting for it.
And until next time, this is Mic Drop.